Welcome, dear friends, to a gentle journey through the world of Attack on Titan, that epic tale of humanity's struggle for survival behind massive walls, fighting against the mysterious titans that devour mankind without reason or mercy. Tonight, we will explore 145 facts about this dark and beautiful story, told not with the urgency of battle, but with the calm appreciation of those who have watched humanity's desperate fight and profound mysteries unfold. These facts will ease you toward sleep while celebrating the series that taught us about freedom, sacrifice, the cycles of hatred, and what it truly means to be human. If you enjoy this peaceful exploration of humanity's last stand, please consider subscribing and share with me in the comments where you're watching from tonight and who your favorite character is. I love hearing from fellow fans of this masterpiece, so settle in, close your eyes when ready, and let us step beyond the walls together into a story of titans and humanity, of monsters and the humans who became them. Fact 1. Humanity lives within 3 massive concentric walls named Maria, Rose, and Sina, each standing 50 meters tall and protecting progressively smaller territories. These walls created a hierarchical society where those living near the center in Wall Sina enjoyed luxury and safety, while those near Wall Maria's edge faced poverty and constant danger. The walls were believed to be humanity's salvation, constructed over a century ago through means no one could remember or explain. Each wall represented not just physical protection but social stratification, with the wealthy and nobility clustering near the king in the interior, while common people and soldiers defended the dangerous outer rings. Fact 2. For 100 years before the story begins, no Titan successfully breached the walls, creating a generation that grew complacent about the threat beyond. This century of false peace allowed some citizens, especially those in the interior, to doubt Titans were even real, dismissing them as exaggerated myths. The peace enabled civilization to rebuild, establishing agriculture, governance, and culture within the wall's protection. However, this security bred arrogance and forgetfulness about the horror that once drove humanity to hide behind walls, making humanity unprepared for when that peace would inevitably shatter and the Titans would remind them why they had hidden in the first place. Fact 3. The year 845 marks humanity's darkest day, when the colossal Titan appeared at Shiganshina district and kicked through Wall Maria's gate, shattering a century of peace in seconds. This breach allowed pure Titans to flood into the outer wall's territory, forcing immediate evacuation and the loss of a third of humanity's territory. The catastrophe resulted in massive casualties, including civilians caught in the initial attack and soldiers overwhelmed by the Titan invasion. The fall of Wall Maria triggered food shortages as humanity lost crucial farmland, leading to starvation and a culling of refugees to reduce mouths to feed, showing how quickly civilization can collapse when safety disappears. Fact 4. Shiganshina district, built on Wall Maria's southern edge, serves as the story's emotional center, as Eren Yeager's hometown and the site where everything changes. The district's unique position, with its gate protruding beyond the wall, made it strategically vulnerable, allowing the colossal Titan to target its gate specifically. Shiganshina's fall on that terrible day killed Eren's mother and countless others, traumatizing the survivors and motivating Eren's quest for vengeance against Titans. Years later, the district becomes the battlefield where humanity launches its counterattack to reclaim Wall Maria, transforming from symbol of loss into testing ground for humanity's survival, making it the most significant location in the entire story. Fact 5. A mysterious religious organization known as The wall cult worships the walls as sacred divine structures that must never be altered, modified, or disrespected under any circumstances. These zealots violently oppose practical defensive improvements like mounting cannons on walls, claiming such modifications would anger the walls themselves. The cult's priests and devoted followers possess strange knowledge about the wall's true nature that they refuse to share with others, maintaining secretive rituals and doctrines. Their fanatical protection of the wall's sanctity seems irrational to pragmatic military minds, but the cult's existence hints at deeper mysteries about what the walls truly are and why certain people desperately want those secrets kept hidden from the general population. Fact 6. The districts built into the walls serve as humanity's primary population centers, with each gate through the walls having a corresponding district that functions as both fortress and city. These districts feature massive gates that can be sealed during Titan attacks, with troops stationed permanently to defend these crucial choke points. The districts closest to Wall Maria's edge face the greatest danger and house primarily working-class citizens and soldiers, while districts deeper inside enjoy more safety and prosperity. Each district has unique character and importance, from Shiganshina's tragic fall to Tros District's desperate defense, with the district's fates often determining humanity's survival or defeat against the Titan's relentless hunger. Fact 7. The walls stand 50 meters tall, roughly the height of a 15-story building, making them impossibly massive structures that dwarf everything else in humanity's civilization. This tremendous height puts the wall's tops beyond the reach of even the tallest normal Titans, who average 3 to 15 meters, making the walls effective barriers for a century. The sheer scale of the walls raises profound questions about their construction. How did humanity build something so massive without modern technology? And how did they accomplish this feat while Titans roamed freely outside? The wall's height creates both physical protection and psychological comfort, allowing citizens to live without seeing the Titans beyond, though this comfort proves hollow when Colossal Titan proves tall enough to peer over. Fact 8. The walls are not actually constructed from stone or any normal building material, but are instead formed from millions of colossal Titans standing side by side in a circle, hardened into dormant, stone-like forms. This horrifying truth remains hidden from most of humanity by the royal government and the wall cult, who understand that revealing this fact would cause mass panic and destroy faith in humanity's protection. The wall Titans can be awakened by the founding Titan's power, transforming from defensive barrier into apocalyptic weapon capable of trampling the entire world. This secret explains the wall's mysterious construction, their perfect durability, and why the wall cult desperately protects them from modification any damage risks, exposing the Titan faces hidden within the wall's structure. Fact 9. Paradise Island, though unknown to most citizens who believe their walls contain all remaining humanity, is actually the isolated island where the walls exist, separated from the mainland across the ocean. The island became humanity's prison when King Fritz led the Eldians here over a century ago, using the founding Titan's power to erect the walls and erase his people's memories of the outside world. This geographic isolation was intentional, creating a cage that would keep Eldians contained and separate from the world they once conquered and oppressed. The island's existence as merely one part of a much larger world, filled with nations, peoples, and especially people who hate Eldians, represents the story's greatest early mystery, completely recontextualizing everything viewers believed about humanity's situation. Fact 10. The illusion of safety the walls provided was always fragile, dependent on no Titan being strong enough to breach them, and on the founding Titan holder maintaining King Fritz's vow to never use the wall's true power. This peace was borrowed time, as the warriors from Marley always intended to eventually break through and claim the founding Titan, while humanity inside remained ignorant of the larger world. The false security allowed people to forget the horror their ancestors experienced, making them soft and unprepared for when the walls would inevitably fail. The walls represented humanity's attempt to opt out of a conflict they couldn't win, choosing isolation and ignorance over freedom, showing how safety purchased through hiding and memory erasure is ultimately illusory and unsustainable. Fact 11. Pure Titans are humans transformed through injection of Titan spinal fluid, becoming mindless giants that exist only to devour humans without understanding why or even needing sustenance. These creatures are the series' most visible horror, wandering the world beyond the walls in vast numbers, creating an environment where humans cannot safely exist outside protected areas. Pure Titans range in size from 3 to 15 meters typically, with various body types from emaciated to grotesquely muscular, each one uniquely disturbing in appearance. They feel no pain, possess no intelligence, and exist in what seems like perpetual torture, driven by unconscious instinct to eat humans in desperate hope of consuming a Titan shifter and regaining human form, though they have no conscious knowledge of this goal. Fact 12. Titans only consume humans despite not needing food for sustenance, ignoring all other animals and showing no interest in any flesh except human. This selective predation makes Titans seem supernaturally designed to torment humanity specifically, rather than being natural predators following survival instincts. Titans do not digest their prey but instead regurgitate humans after their stomachs fill, showing that eating serves no nutritional purpose and is purely compulsive behavior. This horrifying detail reveals Titans' existence as curse rather than biology, creatures trapped in mockery of life that compels them to commit atrocities without providing them any benefit or satisfaction, making them simultaneously monsters to fear and victims to pity. Fact 13. Abnormal Titans deviate from typical pure Titan behavior, displaying unusual movement patterns, intelligence, or speed that makes them far more dangerous than standard mindless Titans. These abnormals might sprint rather than shamble, ignore nearby humans to target specific individuals, or show tactical behavior that suggests retained intelligence. The abnormals' unpredictability makes them particularly deadly to Survey Corps soldiers, whose tactics depend on Titans following predictable patterns. Some abnormals seem to retain fragments of their human personalities or fixations, suggesting the transformation to pure Titan doesn't completely erase the human consciousness, but rather buries it beneath mindless compulsion, making their existence even more tragic and their threat more personal and disturbing to those who encounter them. Fact 14. The Colossal Titan's first appearance at Shiganshina District introduces the story's central mystery, as this 60-meter Titan appears from nowhere, towers over Wall Maria, and kicks through the gate before vanishing in steam. This unprecedented attack reveals that even the walls aren't absolute protection, and that Titans exist with intelligence and purpose, rather than just being mindless beasts. The Colossal Titan's disappearance after breaching the wall raises immediate questions about its nature and goals that won't be answered for many episodes. This moment transforms Attack on Titan from simple monster survival story into complex mystery about intelligent enemies with unknown agendas, making the Colossal Titan's identity and purpose central questions driving the narrative forward. Fact 15. The Armored Titan appears immediately after the Colossal Titan's breach, charging through the evacuating crowds to smash through Wall Maria's inner gate at Shiganshina. This second intelligent Titan demonstrates coordinated attack strategy, ensuring that destroying Outer Gate alone isn't enough and that Titans can penetrate to the intersections. The armored Titan's hardened skin allows it to smash through the wall like a battering ram, introducing another Titan ability beyond just size and strength. The appearance of two intelligent Titans working together proves the attack on Wall Maria was planned military operation rather than random Titan behavior, fundamentally changing humanity's understanding of the threat they face and revealing that somewhere, somehow, enemies exist who can control Titans. Fact 16. Humans become pure Titans through injection of Titan spinal fluid, usually administered as punishment in Marley, where Eldian criminals or dissidents are sent to paradis as mindless Titans. This horrifying method of execution transforms humans into monsters who will terrorize the very people they once belonged to, creating endless supply of Titans that plague the walls. The injection can only affect people of Eldian descent due to their connection to the founder Ymir through paths, making Titan transformation both curse and evidence of their special biology. The transformation process is agonizing and irreversible for pure Titans unless they consume a Titan shifter, condemning the transformed to decades or centuries of existence as mindless cannibalistic giants, making pure Titans victims of cruelty who become perpetrators of horror. Fact 17. All pure Titans were once human, specifically Eldians, who were transformed against their will into monsters, making every Titan the Survey Corps kills a victim as much as a threat. This revelation recontextualizes all Titan combat in the series, transforming heroic giant slaying into tragic necessity, where soldiers must kill transformed humans to protect others. The Eldians transformed into Titans have no control over their actions and likely experience their time as Titans as nightmare from which they cannot wake. Some pure Titans maintain small fragments of their human selves visible in behavior or appearance, creating heartbreaking moments when soldiers might recognize traces of humanity in the monsters they must destroy, adding moral complexity to combat that seemed straightforward when Titans appeared to be simple monsters. Fact 18. The nape of a Titan's neck, specifically a section 1 meter long and 10 centimeters wide, contains the Titan's true body and is the only weak point that causes permanent death. This precise vulnerability demands incredible skill and accuracy from soldiers using ODM gear, as missing this small target while flying at high speed means wasting an attack opportunity. The nape weakness exists because that's where the human body is located within the Titan form, with the Titan flesh being essentially armor grown around the human pilot. Severing the nape kills the human inside, stopping the Titan's regeneration and causing the body to decay. This specific weakness provides humanity's only reliable method for defeating Titans, making ODM gear and the skill to strike napes humanity's most crucial military advantage. Fact 19. Titans possess incredible regeneration abilities that allow them to heal from any damage except destruction of their nape, regrowing lost limbs, and even heads within minutes. This regeneration makes conventional weapons useless against Titans, as cannons and guns can wound but never kill them, with destroyed tissue simply growing back. The regeneration draws on the Titan's energy, with smaller Titans regenerating faster than larger ones, and repeated damage can slow regeneration temporarily. Shifter Titans can regenerate even more rapidly and can choose whether to regenerate specific injuries, giving them tactical control over their healing. The regeneration ability makes Titans seem unkillable to those without knowledge of the nape weakness, contributing to the overwhelming fear Titans inspire in humanity, and explaining why conventional military forces proved helpless against them. Fact 20. Titans depend on sunlight for energy and become lethargic or immobile during nighttime, offering humanity its only reprieve from Titan attacks and allowing nocturnal travel and activity. This solar dependency suggests Titans operate through some form of photosynthesis or light energy conversion rather than normal biology, reinforcing their supernatural nature. The Survey Corps exploits nighttime immobility for travel and camp making, knowing they can rest without fear of attack once the sun sets. However, some abnormals retain mobility at night, creating dangerous uncertainty, and shifter Titans can operate regardless of sunlight. The day-night cycle creates rhythm to life outside the walls where survival strategy must account for time of day, making sunlight both exposure, risk, and necessary recharge period, depending on circumstances. Fact 21. When Titans consume humans, the prey is not digested but instead stored in the Titan's stomach until regurgitated when full, showing the consumption serves no nutritional purpose. This horrifying detail means many people eaten by Titans suffer the horror of being swallowed alive while potentially remaining conscious in the Titan's stomach before eventually being vomited back up as corpse. The lack of digestive system proves Titans don't eat to survive, but rather act on compulsion or instinct they don't understand. This biological impossibility reinforces that Titans are cursed magical beings rather than natural creatures, and their eating behavior serves only to inflict maximum trauma and horror on their victims, making Titans more disturbing as their true nature becomes clearer. Fact 22. The mystery of Titan's existence drives the early narrative, with humanity having no explanation for where Titans came from or why they exclusively target humans. Early theories range from divine punishment to natural disaster to invasive species, with none satisfying all evidence. This mystery makes Titans existentially terrifying. They're an unexplainable apocalypse that destroyed civilization for unknown reasons, leaving survivors with no understanding of why their world ended. The lack of explanation haunts every character, especially those in the Survey Corps who venture outside walls hoping to understand their enemy. The mystery's eventual resolution reveals truth far more complex and tragic than anyone imagined, transforming Titans from mysterious natural disaster into symptom of human conflict and hatred spanning 2,000 years, making the horror more tragic once comprehensible. Fact 23. Rod Rice's abnormal Titan form becomes the largest pure Titan ever seen at 120 meters, nearly twice the colossal Titan's height, though it cannot stand and crawls with its face dragging on the ground. This grotesque form results from Rod-licking Titan serum rather than injecting it properly, creating malformed transformation that makes him even more mindless than typical pure Titans. Rod's abnormal heads directly for the most densely populated area despite the obstacles, possibly drawn by the massive number of humans, or by some instinct related to his royal blood and memories. The destruction caused by Rod's enormous crawling Titan represents Historia's family's final attempt to doom humanity through cowardice, with Rod's refusal to follow through with his own plan, creating monster that nearly destroys everything he claimed to protect. Fact 24. The 9 Titan shifters originated when the founder Ymir Fritz's power was divided among her 3 daughters, who were forced to eat their mother's body to inherit her Titan abilities. This macabre inheritance established the pattern of Titan powers transferring through consumption, creating the 9 Titans founding, Attack, Colossal, Armored, Female, Beast, Jaw, Cart, and Warhammer. Each of the 9 possesses unique abilities and characteristics that reflect aspects of Ymir's original power, split into specialized forms. The 9 Titans can be controlled by intelligent human hosts who retain consciousness and can transform at will, making them fundamentally different from pure Titans. These shifters became weapons in wars between Eldian families and later in Marley's conquest campaigns, with each Titan representing immense strategic power worth any sacrifice to obtain or control, driving much of the story's conflict. Fact 25. The 13-year curse condemns all Titan shifters to die exactly 13 years after inheriting their power, with the curse impossible to break or extend. This limitation stems from Ymir Fritz dying 13 years after gaining Titan powers, with her death establishing the maximum time anyone can hold a Titan's power. The curse creates urgency for Titan holders to accomplish their goals before time runs out, knowing their days are numbered from the moment of inheritance. Marley's warrior program exploits this by giving powers to children who have longer to serve before the curse claims them. The 13-year limit makes Titan powers both blessing and curse, granting immense power but guaranteeing early death, creating tragic inevitability for every shifter who knows exactly when they will die, regardless of what they achieve with their borrowed time. Fact 26. The founding Titan possesses the coordinate power to control all other Titans, pure and shifter alike, making it the most strategically important of the 9 Titans. The founding Titan can command pure Titans to attack specific targets, defend areas, or cease moving entirely, essentially weaponizing the Titan hordes that terrorize humanity. The power extends to memory manipulation, allowing the founding Titan to alter or erase memories of all subjects of Ymir, creating ability to reshape history and consciousness itself. However, the founding Titan's full power can only be accessed by someone of royal blood or through physical contact between a non-royal holder and someone with royal blood. King Fritz imposed a vow renouncing war on all royal-blooded founding Titan holders, making them unable to use its power to fight, creating complicated restrictions on humanity's most powerful weapon. Fact 27. The Attack Titan possesses unique ability to see memories from its future inheritors, allowing it to glimpse events that haven't yet occurred and work toward specific outcomes. This temporal power makes the Attack Titan fundamentally different from other shifters who only access past memories, granting it ability to influence present based on knowledge of future. Aaron Kruger, Grisha Jaeger, and Aaron Jaeger all demonstrated this ability at different points, seeing fragments of future that guided their actions. The future memory ability means the Attack Titan operates across time, with future holders potentially manipulating past holders through the memories they share backward through time. This power explains the Attack Titan's name. It always moves forward toward freedom, guided by future visions that drive it to attack all obstacles regardless of present circumstances or odds against it. Fact 28. The colossal Titan stands 60 meters tall, making it the largest of the 9 Titans and giving it immense destructive capability through sheer size and mass. The colossal Titan's transformation releases explosion-like blast of steam and energy that destroys everything nearby, making even the act of transforming into a weapon that can devastate entire districts. Once transformed, the colossal Titan can emit scalding steam from its body that vaporizes ODM gear cables and prevents soldiers from approaching to attack the nape. The massive size comes with drawbacks. The colossal Titan moves slowly and depletes energy rapidly, limiting how long it can remain transformed. Bertholdt and later Armin used the colossal titan for shock attacks, where sudden appearance and devastating transformation accomplish objectives before the form's limitations become exploitable, making it perfect weapon for destroying walls or creating overwhelming terror through apocalyptic entrance. Fact 29. The armored titan possesses hardened skin covering most of its body that can withstand cannon fire, blade strikes, and even thunder spears, making it nearly invulnerable to conventional attacks. This armor allows the armored titan to charge through walls and fortifications like battering ram, making it perfect for breaching defenses that other titans cannot penetrate. The armor's trade-off is reduced speed and flexibility compared to unarmored titans, with the heavy plates limiting agility. The armored titan can selectively release armor from joints to increase mobility when defense isn't primary concern. Reiner's use of the armored titan demonstrates both its strength smashing through wall Maria, surviving overwhelming attacks, and its limitations, as determined enemies can eventually exploit gaps in armor or wear down its defenses through sustained assault, making it powerful but not invincible. Fact 30. The female titan, held by Annie Leonhardt, possesses versatile abilities, including selective hardening, exceptional speed and agility, and the power to attract pure titans through a scream. The female titan's crystalline hardening creates nearly indestructible material that can protect vital areas or trap the user in impenetrable crystal cocoon as ultimate defense. The scream ability allows calling pure titans to specific location, effectively weaponizing the mindless titans as disposable soldiers against enemies. The female titan's balanced abilities, strong but not strongest, fast but not fastest, tough but not toughest, make it adaptable to various combat situations. Annie's crystallization at end of female titan arc places her in suspended animation inside unbreakable crystal, preserving her for years until the crystal can finally be broken, making her both captive and time capsule waiting for the future when her role in the story resumes. Fact 31. The Beast Titan, inherited by Zeke Yeager, possesses simian appearance and extraordinary throwing accuracy that lets it hurl massive objects like boulders or even other titans with devastating precision. Zeke's pitching ability combined with the Beast Titan's strength creates artillery-like capability that can rain destruction from beyond the range of ODM gear, making the Beast Titan a siege weapon. The Beast Titan can also create pure titans from subjects of Ymir, who consume Zeke's spinal fluid, giving him ability to build disposable armies. Zeke's royal blood, inherited from his mother, Dina Fritz, makes his spinal fluid particularly potent and allows him to control the titans he creates through his scream. The Beast Titan under Zeke's control represents combination of strategic thinking, precise violence, and tactical titan creation that makes him perhaps the most dangerous enemy the Survey Corps faces until they learn his weaknesses. Fact 32. The Jaw Titan is the fastest and most agile of the 9 titans, possessing powerful jaws and claws capable of breaking through substances even other titans cannot damage. The Jaw Titan's speed allows rapid strikes and quick retreats, making it effective for hit-and-run tactics and assassination missions against specific targets. The powerful jaws can crush the otherwise indestructible Warhammer Titan crystal and even bite through the armored Titan's hardened skin. The Jaw Titan passed through multiple holders in the story, first Marcel, then Ymir, then Porco, and finally Falco, with each user bringing different fighting styles to the form. The Jaw Titan's relatively small size compared to other shifters makes it less intimidating but more maneuverable, proving that in Titan combat, speed, and precision can overcome raw size and power, especially when targeting enemy napes or exploiting weaknesses. Fact 33. The cart titan possesses exceptional endurance, able to remain transformed for months at a time, unlike other shifters who tire after hours or days. This stamina makes the cart titan ideal for long-duration missions, supply transport, and sustained combat support rather than short, brutal engagements. The cart titan's quadrupedal form allows mounting weapons or cargo on its back, effectively turning it into mobile weapons platform or supply vehicle. Piekfinger's use of the cart titan demonstrates its support role, carrying Panzer unit equipment and providing sustained fire support during extended operations. The cart titan sacrifices combat power and defensive capabilities for unmatched staying power, showing that not all titan powers are designed for direct confrontation, with support and logistics being equally vital in prolonged conflicts where endurance matters as much as momentary strength or devastation. Fact 34. The Warhammer Titan possesses ability to create structures and weapons from hardened Titan material, manifesting hammers, spikes, crossbows, or defensive walls at will. This creation ability makes the Warhammer Titan versatile and unpredictable in combat, able to adapt to situations by creating whatever tools are needed. The Warhammer Titan's unique ability to project consciousness into hardened crystals separate from the Titan body means the human operator can hide underground while controlling Titan remotely through a cable. This remote control makes the Warhammer Titan nearly impossible to defeat through traditional nape strikes, as destroying the Titan body doesn't kill the operator. The Tiber family held the Warhammer Titan for generations without using it, keeping its existence secret until the raid on Liberio, where its powers are finally revealed and then almost immediately taken by Aaron, who adds its creation abilities to his arsenal. Fact 35. Titan shifters inherit memories from previous holders of their Titan power, creating continuous consciousness that spans generations and allows current holders to access knowledge and experiences of their predecessors. These inherited memories can appear as dreams, visions, or sudden knowledge, with some memories being clearer than others depending on their emotional intensity or relevance. The memory inheritance allows tactical knowledge and information to pass between holders without formal training, making each new shifter a repository of accumulated experience. However, the memories can also be traumatic or disturbing, forcing holders to experience deaths, atrocities, and suffering from past lives. Aaron's inherited memories from previous attack titans, especially his father Grisha and Aaron Kruger, guide his actions and reveal crucial truths about the world, making memory inheritance both tool for understanding history and burden that shapes the inheritor's psychology and choices. Fact 36. The paths are supernatural dimension, where all subjects of Ymir are connected across time and space, appearing as desert of glowing sand under starry sky, where Ymir Fritz builds Titan bodies from sand. This realm exists outside normal time, with years passing in moments, or moments stretching to eternity, depending on perspective. Every Eldian throughout history connects through paths, creating network through which Titan powers, memories, and the founding Titan's commands travel instantaneously. The paths explain how Titan transformation occurs consciousness, traveling through paths to realm where Ymir constructs Titan body before sending consciousness back into the body. Understanding paths reveals that all Eldian experiences, every thought, action, and death are recorded in this space, making it the repository of entire races' existence and the mechanism through which founding Titan can access and manipulate that collective consciousness and body. Fact 37. Shifters must injure themselves and have clear mental intent to transform into their Titan forms, preventing accidental transformations while allowing rapid deployment when needed. The injury requirement can be as simple as biting hand or stabbing with blade, creating wound that triggers healing response that can be redirected into transformation. The need for specific goal focuses the transformation, with the Titan form sometimes reflecting the holder's mental state or purpose. Defensive transformations might unconsciously create hardening, while aggressive intent produces more combat-ready forms. This transformation system balances accessibility and control, making shifting deliberate action rather than involuntary curse, while still allowing emergency transformations when necessary. The requirements mean shifters can be prevented from transforming by restraining them and healing any injuries before they can build intent, creating tactical opportunities for enemies who understand transformation mechanics. Fact 38. Shifter healing operates faster than pure Titan regeneration, with minor wounds closing in seconds and major injuries like lost limbs regenerating in minutes. This healing makes shifters incredibly difficult to kill outside their Titan forms, requiring massive trauma like decapitation or complete body destruction to prevent regeneration. The rapid healing comes with cost. Regenerating extensively drains the shifter's energy and shortens their time before the 13-year curse claims them. Shifters can choose not to heal specific injuries, preserving energy or maintaining disguises that would be revealed by regeneration. The healing ability makes shifters superhuman even in human form, surviving injuries that would kill normal people, though it also marks them as different and can expose their identities when witnesses see wounds vanishing, creating constant tension between using healing to survive and maintaining human disguise. Fact 39. Eren Yeager begins the series as passionate child driven by hatred of Titans after watching his mother eaten during Walmaria's fall. Eren's character-defining trait is his desperate desire for freedom and refusal to accept humanity's caged existence behind walls. His early motivation is straightforward revenge against Titans, joining the Survey Corps determined to kill every last one and reclaim humanity's stolen world. Eren inherits the attack and founding Titans from his father Grisha, gaining powers he doesn't initially understand or control. As the story progresses, Eren's character darkens considerably as he learns the truth about the world, the Titans, and his own role in history. His development from simple vengeance-driven protagonist to morally complex force of nature represents the series' shift from action-adventure to philosophical tragedy, examining freedom's cost, making Eren simultaneously hero, victim, and eventually antagonist of his own story. Fact 40. Mikasa Ackerman, adopted sister who rescued Eren in childhood, possesses abilities from her Ackerman bloodline that make her potentially humanity's most skilled fighter despite her young age. Mikasa's awakening occurred when she watched Eren nearly die as children, triggering Ackerman power that granted her superhuman reflexes, strength, and combat instinct. Her protective devotion to Eren drives much of her character, with Mikasa willing to follow Eren anywhere and kill anyone who threatens him. The Ackerman bloodline makes Mikasa immune to the founding Titan's memory manipulation, allowing her to retain all memories in a world where history is literally rewritten. Mikasa's strength and skill make her an invaluable soldier, but her emotional dependence on Eren creates complicated relationship dynamics, where her love conflicts with moral understanding, that Eren's actions become increasingly indefensible, forcing her to eventually make impossible choice between devotion and duty. Fact 41. Armin Arlert begins as the trio's physically weakest member, who compensates with exceptional strategic intelligence and ability to devise creative solutions under pressure. Armin's defining trait is his curiosity about the world beyond the walls, nurturing dreams of seeing the ocean and exploring humanity's lost territories. His timid nature and self-doubt contrast with remarkable analytical capability that repeatedly saves his friends and turns battles through clever tactics. Armin inherits the colossal titan after Levi chooses to inject him rather than Erwin, becoming a shifter and living with guilt over this choice. His transformation from nervous child strategist to holder of humanity's most destructive power represents the series' theme of forcing innocence to become violence. Armin's eventual choices, including destroying Liberio's port and later helping stop Eren's rumbling, show how war forces even gentle souls to commit atrocities while maintaining moral awareness that makes those atrocities painful. Fact 42. Levi Ackerman, humanity's strongest soldier, possesses combat abilities that make him worth an entire brigade in battle due to his Ackerman bloodline and years of experience. Levi's skills with ODM gear and blades allow him to move faster and strike more precisely than any other soldier, making him Survey Corps' greatest weapon. His stoic personality, crude language, and absolute dedication to defeating Titans make him intimidating despite his short stature. Levi's past in the underground beneath the capital shaped his worldview, having grown up in poverty and crime before joining the Survey Corps under Erwin's guidance. His relationship with Erwin, where he trusted the commander absolutely until the end, defines much of his character. Levi's loyalty to comrades and particular attachment to his squad members creates emotional stakes every time he loses subordinates, making his continued survival through countless battles feel both lucky and tragic as he outlives everyone he cares for. Fact 43. Erwin Smith, 13th Commander of the Survey Corps, leads humanity's exploration beyond the walls with brilliant strategic mind and willingness to make ruthless sacrifices for victory. Erwin's defining trait is his gambler mentality, willingness to bet lives, including his own, on strategies with low success probability if they offer any chance at progress. His true motivation, hidden even from closest allies, is personal desire to prove his father's theory about humanity existing beyond the walls. Erwin's arm loss doesn't diminish his leadership or courage, with him continuing to command from front lines despite disability. His character represents theme of necessary evil good man who commits terrible acts for greater good, making him tragic hero whose death just before learning truth he sought his entire life adds painful irony. Erwin's final charge, leading doomed cavalry against Beast Titan to create opening for Levi, represents his ultimate sacrifice and accepting that he'll never have answers to questions that drove his entire life. Fact 44. Hong Ezo succeeds Erwin as Survey Corps commander, bringing scientific curiosity about Titans and energetic personality that contrasts with the position's grim demands. Hange's Titan research obsession makes them the expert on Titan biology and behavior, conducting experiments that seem mad but yield crucial tactical knowledge. Their capture and experiments with Titans Sunny and Bean demonstrated unique approach that treated Titans as subjects for understanding rather than just enemies to kill. Honge's idealism and hope for peaceful coexistence between Eldians and the world becomes increasingly strained as they witness atrocities on all sides. Their evolution from cheerful Titan enthusiast to exhausted commander, bearing impossible weight, demonstrates how war consumes even the most optimistic souls. hung his sacrifice during the rumbling, staying behind to burn approaching colossal titans and buy time for others to escape, represents their acceptance that their idealistic dream died and that their life's value lies in preserving the few who might create better future than they could. Fact 45. Reiner Braun serves as armored titan holder sent by Marley to breach Wall Maria, infiltrating human society as soldier and friend while maintaining cover as mass murderer. Reiner's split personality develops from the impossible burden of being both loyal soldier and infiltrator, pretending to be comrade to those he's doomed. His psyche fractures between warrior identity, loyal to Marley, and soldier identity that genuinely bonds with the 104th Cadets. This dissociative state allows Reiner to live with cognitive dissonance of befriending people he's condemned, with his breakdown when the dual identities can no longer coexist, revealing the psychological toll of his mission. Reiner survives despite wanting death, becoming the series' most tormented character who lives through every horror while longing for the death that claims his friends. His eventual understanding that all sides are victims of history rather than simple heroes and villains makes him key to forming the alliance against Eren. Reiner's survival to the story's end, living with guilt and memories of his actions, represents the burden of those who commit atrocities and must continue living afterward, making him embodiment of war's psychological aftermath. Fact 46. Annie Leonhardt, holder of the female Titan, infiltrates humanity's forces alongside Reiner and Bertholdt, maintaining cold exterior that hides conflicted feelings about her mission. Annie's combat skills, learned from her father, make her the 104th's top hand-to-hand fighter even without Titan powers, demonstrating her dedication to training and survival. Her desire to return to her father, the only person who showed her love despite his harsh training methods, motivates her to continue her mission, even when she clearly questions its morality. Annie's capture and self-crystallization places her in suspended animation for years, preserving her inside impenetrable crystal while the world changes outside. Her eventual awakening places her in a world where her former enemies become allies and where Marley has been devastated, making her frozen time both protection from ongoing horrors and source of displacement. Annie's complex relationship with Armin, developed despite being on opposite sides of conflict, shows how understanding and empathy can transcend war's divisions, even when those divisions require killing each other in battle. Fact 47. Bertholdt Hoover, the colossal Titan holder who kicked through Wall Maria, possesses gentle personality that contrasts sharply with the destruction his Titan form causes. Bertholdt's passivity and tendency to follow others' decisions makes him a tragic figure manipulated into becoming humanity's greatest boogeyman, despite his fundamentally kind nature. His unrequited feelings for Annie and loyalty to Reiner drive many of his actions, showing how personal attachments influence world-altering decisions. Bertholdt's final transformation at Shiganshina, where he accepts his role as destroyer and stops hesitating, represents his tragic acceptance that he must embrace being monster if he wants to survive and protect his friends. His death, eaten by Armin and passing the colossal Titan to his former friend, completes the tragedy of his character. The gentle boy forced to be weapon dies at hands of person he once protected during training, with his power and memories becoming Armin's burden. Bertholdt's memory haunts Armin afterward, making his death more than tactical victory, but rather tragic necessity that leaves survivor guilt. Fact 48. Historia Rice, born as illegitimate child of Rod Rice and raised as Krista Lenz, possesses royal blood that makes her crucial to accessing the founding Titan's full power. Historia's initial persona as kind, selfless Krista masks her genuine desire to die heroically, to earn love and validation, making her apparent kindness actually self-destructive martyrdom. Her true identity revelation forces her to confront family history of cowardice and complicity in humanity's suffering behind the walls. Historia's refusal to become founding Titan by eating Eren represents her rejecting the cycle where royal family members inherit the vow renouncing war and humanity's fate. Her eventual role as Queen of Paradis places her in position where she must make terrible decisions about her people's survival while bearing knowledge of royal family's crimes and the world's hatred of Eldians. Historia's pregnancy, controversial in its timing and purpose, represents her choosing to live and create new life even in world heading toward apocalypse, rejecting self-sacrifice in favor of selfish but human desire for survival and family. Fact 49. The Survey Corps represents humanity's attempt to reclaim the world beyond the walls, suffering catastrophic casualties in every expedition outside Walrose. The Corps' green cloaks and Wings of Freedom emblem symbolize humanity's refusal to accept caged existence, despite the horrific death rate that makes joining the Scouts essentially suicidal. The Survey Corps historically had lowest prestige among military branches, with population viewing them as wasteful organization that sacrificed lives without meaningful results. The Corps' expeditions used long-range scouting formations designed to avoid Titan contact while gathering intelligence about territory beyond walls. Members join either from genuine idealism about humanity's freedom or from having nothing left to lose after Titan attacks destroy their lives. The Survey Corps' evolution from exploring to fighting Titans to eventually becoming key players in global politics demonstrates how their willingness to venture beyond known world positioned them to discover truths about humanity that would change everything, making their sacrifices meaningful even when individual expeditions seemed failures. Fact 50. The Omnidirectional Mobility Gear, or ODM gear, is humanity's most crucial technology for fighting Titans, allowing soldiers to fly through urban and forest environments using gas-powered grappling hooks and cables. The gear launches anchors into buildings or trees, then reels soldiers toward anchor points at high speed, creating three-dimensional movement that matches Titan's mobility and reach. Dual blades made of ultra-hard steel attached to the gear, allowing soldiers to slash Titan napes, while flying past at high speed, the only reliable method for killing Titans humanity has discovered. Operating ODM gear requires exceptional balance, spatial awareness, and reflexes, making it incredibly difficult to master, despite being essential for Titan combat. The gear's complexity means soldiers need extensive training before deployment, with many trainees washing out of combat branches because they cannot master the gear's operation. ODM gear represents humanity's technological adaptation to overwhelming biological disadvantage, using engineering and skill to create fighting chance against monsters that would otherwise be unstoppable, making it symbol of human ingenuity and determination to survive against impossible odds. And so, we close this first part of our journey through Attack on Titan's world, having explored the walls that protected and imprisoned humanity, the Titans that tormented and transformed them, and the characters who would uncover truths about their reality. We have seen how the story begins with simple premise. Humanity fights monsters to survive before revealing layers of complexity about identity, history, and the cycles of hatred that create monsters both literal and figurative. As you drift towards sleep tonight, imagine standing atop Wall Maria, looking out at the world beyond those walls that once seemed to represent the entirety of reality, understanding now that walls were always temporary illusion, that truth waited beyond them, vast and terrible and far more complex than simple survival against mindless beasts. The Titans shamble in the distance, each one a victim transformed into threat, each one a piece of puzzle about humanity's true nature and the price of hatred carried across generations. Sleep peacefully knowing that even in stories about apocalyptic monsters and devastating battles, the deepest questions are about what it means to be human, what freedom costs, and whether cycles of violence can ever be broken, or whether they simply repeat eternally with new faces playing ancient roles. Rest now, and tomorrow you may wake to continue this exploration of humanity's fight not just against Titans, but against the history that created them and the hatred that sustains them across centuries. Fact 51. Marley is the nation that controls most of the world outside Paradise Island, using Titan powers as weapons to maintain military dominance over other nations. Marley conquered the Eldian Empire during the Great Titan War a century ago, seizing 7 of the 9 Titans, while King Fritz fled to Paradis with the founding Titan. The Marleyan government relies on Titans for warfare despite advancing technology beginning to make them obsolete, creating desperation to capture the founding Titan before their military advantage disappears completely. Marley society is built on hatred of Eldians, viewing them as devils whose ancestors oppressed the world for 2 millennia. The nation's propaganda teaches that Eldians are responsible for countless atrocities and that keeping them contained or eliminating them entirely serves justice and world safety. Marley's aggressive expansionism and wars with neighboring nations drive their need for Titan weapons, creating a cycle where they oppress Eldians while depending on them for military power. Fact 52. Eldians living in Marley are oppressed minority forced into internment zones, marked with armbands, and denied basic rights that Marleyan citizens enjoy freely. These Eldians are descendants of those who remained on the mainland after King Fritz's exodus, living under constant surveillance and suspicion as potential threats. Marleyan Eldians are called subjects of Ymir and can transform into Titans, making them both strategic resource and existential danger in Marleyan society's eyes. The armbands Eldians must wear identify them instantly, allowing discrimination and violence against them while preventing them from blending into Marleyan population. Eldian children grow up learning to hate their own heritage, taught that their ancestors were devils who deserved punishment. The internment zones create ghettos where Eldians live separately from Marleyans, with restricted movement and constant military presence. This systematic oppression serves both to contain potential Titan threat and to maintain Marleyan national identity built on their role as Eldian Empire's victims and conquerors. Fact 53. The Liberio internment zone in Marley houses Eldian population, including the warrior candidates and their families, creating community under military occupation. Liberio features walls and gates controlling Eldian movement, with Marleyan soldiers stationed to enforce restrictions and prevent unauthorized exit from the zone. Despite oppression, Liberio's residents maintain community with businesses, homes, and cultural life within their confined space, creating normalcy under abnormal circumstances. The zone serves as recruitment ground for warrior program, with Eldian children competing for honor of becoming Titan shifters who serve Marley. Liberio becomes target of Aaron's attack during the Tiber festival, with Aaron transforming inside the zone and killing countless civilians, including children, in his strike against Marley's military leadership. The destruction of Liberio represents how victims of oppression can become oppressors, with Aaron using the same horrific tactics against Eldians that Marley used against Paradis, completing cycle of violence that defines the series. Fact 54. Marley's use of Titans as weapons involves transforming Eldian criminals into pure Titans and dropping them on enemy territories or onto Paradise Island. This tactical deployment of mindless Titans creates biological weapons that require no supply lines, cannot be negotiated with, and instill primal terror in enemies. The pure Titans sent to Paradise wander the island for decades, becoming the threat that confines humanity behind walls, while serving Marley's strategic goal of containing Paradise without direct military engagement. Marley also uses the 9 Titans held by warriors in conventional warfare, deploying shifters as shock troops, siege weapons, and terror weapons against nations they conquer. The Titan warfare gives Marley overwhelming advantage against nations without Titan powers, but advancing military technology, especially anti-Titan artillery, begins eroding this advantage during the story's timeline. Marley's dependence on Titan warfare becomes liability as other nations develop counters, driving desperate urgency to obtain founding Titan before their empire collapses. Fact 55. The warrior program selects Eldian children and trains them to inherit Titan powers, serving Marley as elite soldiers in exchange for honorary Marleyan status for their families. Children as young as 5 compete for warrior selection, enduring harsh training and indoctrination that teaches them to view Paradise Eldians as island devils who deserve extermination. The program offers only path for Eldians to earn respect and improved living conditions, making it desperately attractive despite requiring children to become weapons. Warriors receive better treatment than other Eldians but remain second-class citizens who can be discarded once their usefulness ends or 13-year curse claims them. The program's cynical manipulation of oppressed children, offering crumbs of dignity in exchange for sacrificing their lives, demonstrates Marley's moral bankruptcy and the desperation oppression creates. Warriors like Reiner, Annie, and Berthold became child soldiers sent to massacre Paradise, with their psychological trauma from this mission showing costs of turning children into weapons of genocide. Fact 56. Sending child warriors to infiltrate Paradise and retrieve the founding Titan represents Marley's long-term strategy for securing ultimate Titan power. The mission requires warriors to breach the walls, trigger chaos, then infiltrate human society to locate and steal the founding Titan from royal family. Using children makes infiltration easier, as they can more believably blend into refugee populations, fleeing the attack they themselves caused. The warrior's youth means more years of service before the 13-year curse claims them, maximizing return on investment of granting Titan powers. The mission's duration years spent living among the enemy creates psychological burden that destroys the warrior's mental health, as they befriend those they must betray. The child soldier strategy reveals how both Marley and Paradise sacrifice children to their war, with young people bearing costs of hatred their ancestors created, making warriors tragic figures manipulated by system that views them as disposable tools, despite their humanity and suffering. Fact 57. The 100-year mission to reclaim the founding Titan drives Marley's actions toward Paradise, with recovering this power being strategic necessity for maintaining their empire's dominance. Marley fears that whoever holds the founding Titan could unleash the Wall Titans in the rumbling, destroying the world and ending Marleyan civilization. However, they also desperately want the founding Titan's power for themselves to secure absolute military superiority before advancing technology makes ordinary Titans obsolete. The mission's century-long duration reflects the difficulty of breaching Paradise's defenses and the patience required for infiltration strategy to succeed. Marley sends multiple warriors and pure Titan drops to Paradis over the years, accepting heavy losses in pursuit of prize that would secure their future. The mission's importance makes it consume resources and lives that Marley considers worthwhile investments, showing how pursuit of ultimate power justifies any atrocity in eyes of nation-states willing to commit genocide for strategic advantage. Fact 58. King Fritz's vow, renouncing war, binds all royal-blooded holders of the founding Titan to pacifism, preventing them from using its full power to defend Paradis or fight back. The vow was created by the 145th King Fritz when he fled to Paradis, establishing ideology of peace through surrender that would constrain all his descendants. Royal founding Titan holders who try to resist the vow find their will overridden by the first king's lingering consciousness, which forces them to accept humanity's destruction rather than fight. This vow ensures that even if Paradis possesses ultimate weapon in the wall Titans, they cannot deploy it, making the founding Titan simultaneously humanity's greatest asset and greatest liability. The vow represents King Fritz's guilt over Eldian Empire's atrocities and his belief that Eldians deserve punishment rather than survival. The vow's existence creates strategic situation where Paradis's only hope lies in non-royal holders accessing founding Titan's power through contact with royal blood, circumventing the pacifism curse that dooms royal holders to fatalistic surrender. Fact 59. The world's hatred of Eldians stems from 2,000 years of Eldian Empire's rule, when Titan powers allowed them to conquer and oppress other nations brutally. Marleyan propaganda claims Eldians used Titans to commit genocide, ethnic cleansing, and forced breeding programs designed to spread Eldian blood and create more potential Titan shifters. Whether these atrocities are historical truth, Marleyan propaganda, or mixture of both remains ambiguous, but the world genuinely believes them and hates Eldians accordingly. Nations beyond Marley view all Eldians as genetic threats whose ability to become Titans makes them dangerous, regardless of individual character or choices. This racial hatred makes peaceful coexistence between Eldians and the rest of humanity seemingly impossible, with even Eldians themselves sometimes believing they deserve punishment. The historical hatred creates trap where Eldians cannot escape being viewed as monsters, making violence self-perpetuating as each generation's actions confirm the other side's prejudices, an endless cycle that no apology or peace offering can break. Fact 60. The 2,000 years of Eldian Empire represents the historical period when Ymir's descendants ruled the world using Titan powers to build empire through conquest and terror. The Empire's reign saw Titans used to crush armies, destroy cities, and enforce Eldian dominance over all other peoples who lacked defense against such power. Different sources give conflicting accounts of the Empire. Marleyan propaganda describes it as pure evil, while Eldian nationalists claim it brought prosperity and civilization. The historical ambiguity reflects how victors write history and how propaganda from all sides obscures truth about what actually occurred 2 millennia ago. The Empire's legacy of violence and oppression creates hatred that persists long after the Empire's fall, showing how historical atrocities poison present, regardless of whether current generations participated in them. The 2,000 years demonstrate how long hatreds can endure and how difficult breaking cycles of violence becomes when grievances span millennia and involve entire ethnic groups rather than individuals. Fact 61. The Great Titan War occurred roughly 100 years before the main story, when the Eldian Empire collapsed through internal conflict between Eldian families controlling different Titans. The war saw Titans used against other Titans in civil war that devastated territories and allowed Marley to exploit Eldian disunity. Marley turned some Eldian families against others, eventually securing control over 7 of the 9 Titans, while the founding Titans holder fled. King Fritz's exodus to Paradise with many Eldians ended the empire but also abandoned mainland Eldians to Marleyan rule and oppression. The war's conclusion established current world order, where Marley dominates through captured Titans while Paradise isolates behind walls. The Great Titan War represents how internal division among oppressors allowed their victims to rise up, but also how conflict's conclusion simply rearranged who held power rather than ending Titangent-based oppression entirely, replacing Eldian Empire with Marleyan Empire that uses same Titan weapons in same ways against same people who are now their victims instead of masters. Fact 62. Marley's military expansion continues throughout the story's timeline as they wage wars against the Mideast allied forces and other neighboring nations. These conflicts demonstrate that despite possessing Titans, Marley faces genuine military threats from nations that develop technology and tactics to counter Titan warfare. The Mideast War results in heavy casualties, including the loss of armored train units to enemy artillery, showing that conventional weapons are catching up to Titan effectiveness. Marley's aggressive expansion serves both resource acquisition and maintaining ideology that positions them as righteous conquerors rather than oppressors. The constant warfare drains Marleyan resources and requires continued deployment of their aging warriors, accelerating their need to reclaim the founding Titan before their military advantage evaporates. The expansion demonstrates how empires built on military might must continue conquering to maintain power, creating perpetual conflict that consumes lives and resources in pursuit of dominance that becomes harder to maintain as the world changes and evolves counters to previously overwhelming weapons. Fact 63. The Mideast allied forces develop anti-Titan artillery that can penetrate even the armored Titan's hardened skin, representing technological progress that threatens to make Titans obsolete as weapons. These nations learned from decades of fighting Marleyan Titans, developing tactics and weapons specifically designed to counter what were once unstoppable weapons. The new artillery's success in the war demonstrates that Titan's reign as ultimate weapons is ending, giving urgency to Marley's desperation to secure the founding Titan before their advantage disappears. The technological advancement creates race between evolving weapons and Marley's ability to maintain dominance through Titan power. The Mideast conflict shows that even overwhelming power eventually faces counters as enemies adapt and innovate, making no military advantage permanent. This technological shift makes Titans from strategic assets into liabilities, as the resources spent maintaining warrior program and pure Titan operations might better serve developing modern weapons, but Marley's ideology and existing power structure resist adaptation, preferring to double down on Titans even as their effectiveness wanes. Fact 64. Technology advancing beyond Titans creates existential crisis for Marley's power structure that's built entirely on monopolizing Titan warfare capabilities. The development of aircraft, improved artillery, and potential for future weapons like aerial bombardment suggests that within years or decades, Titans will become obsolete museum pieces rather than strategic weapons. This technological trajectory drives Marley's desperate timeline for capturing the founding Titan. They need it now, before the window closes and Titans cease mattering militarily. The advancing technology also affects Paradis, which begins industrializing rapidly after learning about the outside world, attempting to catch up centuries of development in years. The technological shift represents how warfare evolves and how powers based on specific weapons must adapt or decline as those weapons become obsolete. The series explores how historical advantages, whether Titan powers or any military superiority, eventually erode as enemies innovate, making permanent dominance through force impossible, and suggesting that powers built purely on military might face inevitable decline, regardless of how overwhelming their advantage once seemed. Fact 65. The world's alliance against parity becomes inevitable once Eldians on the island start threatening retaliation, with nations that previously competed with each other uniting against common enemy. The formation of global military alliance to destroy parodies demonstrates how external threats can temporarily unite otherwise hostile powers. This alliance makes Paradis' situation hopeless through conventional military means, as even with Titans they cannot fight the entire world's combined forces. The alliance's formation justifies Aaron's later decision to begin the rumbling as preemptive strike before global forces can launch coordinated attack. The world's unity against Eldians shows how racial hatred can transcend national interests, with nations willing to cooperate specifically to eliminate people they view as existential threat. The alliance represents how victim status can shift, with oppressed Eldians becoming perceived threats that justify their own elimination, demonstrating how cycles of violence create situations where everyone claims self-defense while committing atrocities against those they fear will commit atrocities against them. Fact 66. The Ackerman bloodline originated as a result of Titan science experiments that created humans with exceptional combat abilities and resistance to memory manipulation. The Ackermans were produced through biological modifications that gave them access to Titangent-like strength and reflexes without requiring transformation. Their immunity to memory alteration made them dangerous to the royal government, which could not control Ackermans through founding Titans' memory manipulation that kept other Eldians compliant. The royal family persecuted Ackermans within the walls, attempting to eliminate bloodline that couldn't be controlled through normal means. The Ackerman abilities activate through awakening moment of extreme stress or danger, granting them sudden access to combat knowledge and physical capabilities that make them superhuman. The bloodline's existence proves that Eldian royal family experimented with creating enhanced humans, showing their scientific sophistication and moral willingness to modify human biology for strategic purposes, raising questions about what other experiments might have been conducted in pursuit of military advantage. Fact 67. The Ackermans are byproducts of Titan science, created through genetic manipulation or magical alteration that grants them access to paths in limited ways. This connection gives Ackermans access to combat experience accumulated across their bloodline, allowing them to fight with skill that normally requires decades of training. The Ackerman power represents attempt to create humans with tangent-level capabilities without actual transformation, succeeding in producing super soldiers but also creating beings who cannot be controlled. The science behind their creation remains mysterious, with explanations ranging from genetic engineering to magical bloodline curses that altered their fundamental nature. The Ackerman's status as Titan science experiments makes them living proof of royal families' willingness to manipulate human biology, treating people as experimental subjects to develop weapons. The byproduct nature suggests Ackermans might have been unintended, result of other experiments, or that their creation served different purpose than what they became, with their combat abilities emerging from research aimed at something else entirely. Fact 68. Ackermans are immune to the founding Titans' memory manipulation, making them only humans besides non-Eldians, who retain their memories when royal family rewrites history. This immunity made Ackermans dangerous to royal government inside the walls, as they couldn't be made to forget atrocities or accept false histories through mass memory alteration. The immunity stems from their altered biology that connects them to paths differently than normal Eldians, preventing Founding Titan from accessing their memories. This resistance makes Ackermans valuable allies, but also problematic subjects for any power structure built on information control and historical revisionism. The memory immunity explains why royal family persecuted Ackermans. Despite their military value, controllable soldiers are better than powerful ones who cannot be made to forget what they witness. The immunity creates situation where Levi and Mikasa retain memories of all events, while others around them might have their recollections altered, making Ackermans living archives of true history that cannot be erased or rewritten to serve power's convenience. Fact 69. The awakening moment of Ackerman power occurs when Ackerman experiences extreme danger or witnesses someone they care about facing death, triggering sudden access to their bloodline's abilities. Mikasa's awakening occurred in childhood, when she saw her parents murdered and Eren nearly killed by kidnappers, with fear and rage triggering transformation into superhuman fighter. Levi's awakening presumably occurred during his harsh childhood in the underground or during early experiences with violence and survival. The awakening grants instant access to combat skills and physical capabilities that seem impossible for their age or experience level, as if downloading knowledge directly. The moment is described as gaining clarity and purpose, with the world suddenly making sense and body knowing how to fight without conscious thought. The awakening transforms Ackermans from normal humans into warriors capable of matching or exceeding Titan shifters in combat, though without transformation or regeneration abilities that make shifters so dangerous. Fact 70. Levi's underground origins in the capital's subterranean slums shaped his personality and combat skills, with his harsh childhood creating the cold pragmatism he displays throughout the series. Living in poverty and filth made Levi develop obsession with cleanliness as way to maintain dignity in degrading environment. His early life involved crime, violence, and survival in lawless underground where strength determined whether you lived or starved. The underground's harsh conditions killed Levi's mother and many others, creating a world where life was cheap and sentiment was luxury. Levi's friendship with Furlan and Isabel, fellow underground residents, showed his capacity for connection despite harsh exterior, with their deaths during early Survey Corps mission traumatizing him. The underground experience taught Levi that idealism doesn't keep you alive, but strength and ruthless pragmatism do, shaping philosophy he carries throughout series about doing what's necessary, regardless of personal cost or moral complexity. Fact 71. Kenny Ackerman, Levi's uncle, raised him briefly after his mother's death, teaching him combat skills and survival tactics, before abandoning him once Levi could survive independently. Kenny was infamous as Kenny the Ripper, serial killer who murdered military police members, using his Ackerman abilities for personal violence rather than any cause. Despite his brutality, Kenny taught Levi crucial skills for survival and demonstrated Ackerman combat capabilities that Levi would later perfect. Kenny's later service to the royal family as captain of the anti-personnel control squad shows how Ackermans could be bought or manipulated despite being unable to be memory controlled. Kenny's relationship with Yuri Reese, the previous Founding Titan holder, gave him understanding of Titan powers and royal family's secrets. His eventual betrayal and death during the coup arc, along with his passing the Titan serum to Levi, demonstrate complicated character, who served multiple masters while ultimately pursuing personal dream of becoming Titan himself, believing power would give meaning to his violent life. Fact 72. Mikasa's awakening moment, where she gained Ackerman powers, occurred when she was 9 years old, during the traumatic experience of her parents' murder and her own kidnapping. The awakening happened when Eren urged her to fight after giving her knife, with her fear and rage triggering sudden transformation into person capable of killing adult men despite being child. The awakening gave Mikasa her characteristic red scarf's emotional significance, as Eren wrapped it around her after the incident, making it symbol of both her trauma and her salvation through Eren's intervention. This origin moment explains Mikasa's intense protectiveness of Eren, as her awakening and his act of kindness are intertwined in her psychology, making Eren the center of her world. The childhood trauma and subsequent awakening shaped Mikasa's personality, making her simultaneously incredibly strong and emotionally dependent, capable of devastating violence, but needing Eren as anchor for her identity and purpose. Fact 73. The Ackerman clan's persecution by the royal family within the walls stemmed from their immunity to memory manipulation, making them uncontrollable population that had to be marginalized or eliminated. The royal government couldn't use Founding Titan's power to make Ackermans forget the truth about the outside world, history, or government crimes, making them perpetual threat to information control. This persecution forced Ackermans underground both literally and figuratively, with many like Levi living in the underground or like Mikasa's family hiding in remote areas. The clan's near extinction within the walls shows how thoroughly royal government hunted them, leaving only scattered survivors by the story's beginning. The persecution demonstrates how authoritarian regimes view those they cannot control as greater threats than actual enemies, with the royal family fearing Ackerman's memory immunity more than Titans beyond the walls. The clan's history adds layer to Levi and Mikasa's characters, making them survivors of genocide and explaining their distrust of authority and institutions that persecuted their people simply for being uncontrollable. Fact 74. The Fritz divided by Rice family maintained royal bloodline within the walls under false name Rice, while a puppet king with Fritz name ruled publicly. This deception protected true royal family from assassination, while allowing them to control government through shadowy influence rather than direct rule. The Rice family's true power lay in their possession of Founding Titan, passed down through generations, giving them absolute control over Eldian population through memory manipulation and Titan command. The family's compound contained underground chapel, where Founding Titan transfer ceremonies occurred through forced consumption of previous holder by designated heir. The royal family's secrets included truth about the outside world, the Wall Titan's nature, and King Fritz's vow that bound them to pacifism. The family's dedication to maintaining these secrets at any cost, including memory alteration and murder of those who learned the truth, shows their commitment to King Fritz's ideology over their subjects' survival, making them complicit in humanity's potential extinction through their refusal to use Founding Titan's power to actually defend their people. Fact 75. The vow renouncing war-binding royal-blooded Founding Titan holders represents King Fritz's attempt to end Eldian imperialism by making future generations unable to use Titans for conquest or even self-defense. The vow essentially curses royal family, overriding their free will when they try to use Founding Titan's power, replacing their intentions with First King's pacifist ideology. Royal holders who inherit the Founding Titan find themselves suddenly agreeing with King Fritz's belief that Eldians deserve extinction for their ancestors' crimes, making the vow a form of mind control that ensures cooperation. The vow represents King Fritz's arrogance in deciding for all future generations that they should accept destruction rather than fight, treating descendants as inheritors of collective guilt, rather than individuals deserving survival. The vow's existence creates tragic situation where power that could save humanity is held by those literally incapable of using it, making founding titans simultaneously humanity's greatest hope and guaranteed doom, explaining why non-royal holders are necessary if the power is to be used without the pacifism curse. Fact 76. Rod Rice's cowardice defines his character, as he repeatedly refuses to become founding titan himself, despite being royal-blooded, instead forcing others to bear the burden and curse. Rod's refusal stems from unwillingness to be bound by the vow and to sacrifice his life for his people, preferring to manipulate others into becoming titan while maintaining his comfortable existence. His attempts to feed Eren to Historia to make her the founding titan demonstrate his willingness to sacrifice his own daughter rather than do his duty himself. Rod's pathetic pleading and attempted manipulation when Historia refuses shows how empty his authority becomes when he cannot force compliance through lies and emotional manipulation. His eventual transformation into massive abnormal titan after licking spilled titan serum represents his cowardice, literally making him into monster, with his refusal to properly inject serum creating malformed titan. Rod's death, burned alive by Historia, who rejects his legacy, represents rejection of royal family's cowardice and the end of rule by those too afraid to fight for their people's survival. Fact 77. Historia's reluctant acceptance of duty as queen represents her growth from Krista's false selflessness to genuine responsibility, where she chooses to live and fight despite burden of leadership. Her refusal to eat Eren and become founding titan marks moment where she rejects the role royal family traditionally played, choosing to protect Eren's life and agency over duty to become power's vessel. Historia's decision to become queen rather than monster shows her accepting responsibility for her people without sacrificing her humanity or accepting that royals must become titans. Her struggle with queenship throughout later story, especially regarding decisions about the rumbling in Eren's plans, shows how leadership forces terrible choices between protecting your people and protecting your principles. Historia's eventual pregnancy creates protection against being forced to become titan, as pregnant women cannot safely transform, showing how she uses biology strategically to maintain autonomy. Her character arc demonstrates how true strength isn't self-sacrifice, but rather choosing to live with the weight of your choices and fight for survival despite costs. Fact 78. Frida Reese possessed founding titan before Grisha took it, and was characterized by gentle nature that became corrupted by King Fritz's vow once she inherited the power. Frida appeared to young Historia in secret visits, acting as kind older sister figure who taught Historia to read and be compassionate. Her personality change after inheriting founding titan shows the vow's power, transforming her from caring sister into fatalistic acceptor of humanity's doom. Grisha's confrontation with Frida reveals how the vow prevented her from using founding titan to save humanity, even when faced with titans breaching the walls and killing thousands. Frida's inability to fight back against Grisha, despite possessing ultimate titan power, demonstrates the vow's complete control, making her watch helplessly as Grisha killed her family and devoured her. Her tragic death represents waste of potential, as Frida could have saved countless lives if not bound by ancestors' ideology that valued guilt over survival, making her victim of system that sacrificed children to inherit curses their ancestors created. Fact 79. Yuri Reese and Kenny Ackerman's friendship represents unlikely connection between royal founding titan holder and serial killer, with Yuri's compassion toward Kenny creating bond that transcended their positions. Yuri's apology to Kenny for the persecution of Ackermans and his genuine remorse for royal family's actions impressed Kenny enough to earn his loyalty and service. Their relationship shows how even those bound by King Fritz's vow could maintain individual connections and moral awareness, with Yuri recognizing royal family's crimes even while unable to fight against the vow's fatalism. Yuri's prediction that the Ackerman clan would one day be crucial to changing the world proved prophetic, as Levi and Mikasa become key to both Paradise's survival and eventually stopping Eren. Yuri's death passing Founding Titan to Frida continued the curse to next generation, with Kenny witnessing how the power corrupted Yuri's niece, just as it had bound Yuri. The friendship between Yuri and Kenny demonstrates how personal connections can transcend systemic injustice, though ultimately, those connections cannot prevent systems from continuing their harmful patterns. Fact 80. The Founding Titan's power to erase memories allowed royal family to rewrite history and control information within the walls, creating false reality where citizens believed they were last humans. This memory manipulation happened repeatedly throughout the century of false peace, erasing knowledge of outside world and any information that contradicted government narratives. The power worked on all subjects of Ymir except Ackermans and non-Eldians, meaning vast majority of population could have memories altered without awareness. The memory erasure explains how royal family maintained control despite their lies about the world, as any dissent or truth-seeking could be literally erased from dissenters' minds. The power's horrifying implications include that citizens' very identities and memories might be fabrications, that relationships and experiences could be altered or removed, that personal history itself was subject to royal families' whims. The memory manipulation represents ultimate authoritarian control, where not just behavior but thought itself can be regulated, making freedom impossible when even your own mind's contents can be edited by those in power. Fact 81. The coordinate ability to control pure titans gives Founding Titan holder power to command mindless titans like soldiers, directing them to attack specific targets or defend positions. Eren accidentally uses this power when threatened by Dina Fritz's Titan, instinctively commanding nearby Titans to devour her despite not understanding what he was doing. The power works through paths, sending commands instantly to all pure Titans, regardless of distance, making it capable of controlling thousands simultaneously. The Coordinate's military potential is enormous, as it essentially gives user an army of giant disposable soldiers that can be directed against any target. However, the power's full potential is limited by royal blood requirement, with non-royal holders only able to use coordinate through contact with those of royal descent. The coordinate ability explains why Founding Titan is so strategically important. Whoever controls it controls all pure Titans, potentially turning humanity's greatest threat into ultimate weapon, making Founding Titan simultaneously defensive tool for parody and offensive weapon that could destroy the world. Fact 82. The Founding Titan's limitations without royal blood create complicated situation where Eren possesses ultimate power he cannot fully utilize without help from Historia or Zeke. This limitation stems from King Fritz's design of the power structure, ensuring that Founding Titan's full capabilities would only work for royal descendants who were bound by his vow. The workaround through physical contact with royal blood allows non-royal holders to access power without inheriting the pacifism curse, creating loophole in King's design. The limitation drives much of the later plot, with Eren needing to develop strategy using either Historia or Zeke to unlock Founding Titan's true capabilities. The restriction represents how even ultimate power has constraints, making Eren dependent on cooperation with others despite possessing world-destroying capabilities within him. The limitation's eventual circumvention through Ymir's choice to follow Eren rather than royal commands represents the power's true source, lying not in bloodlines but in Ymir herself, making royal blood relevant only because Ymir had been enslaved to obey royalty for 2 millennia. Fact 83. Zeke's royal blood through his mother Dina Fritz makes him strategically crucial, despite not being founding Titan holder, as he provides key to unlocking its full power. Dina's royal lineage, kept secret during her time on Paradis, passed to Zeke when she gave birth to him with Grisha. Zeke's royal blood combined with his beast Titan makes him able to create Titans from his spinal fluid and control those he creates through his scream. This ability makes Zeke mini-founding Titan, able to control subset of Titans, though not all pure Titans like the Coordinate can. Zeke's royal blood makes him target for both Marley, who wants to control him, and Paradis, who needs him to unlock Eren's full power. His bloodline creates ironic situation where he's simultaneously valuable asset, strategic weapon, and ultimate key to apocalypse, with various factions wanting to use him for contradictory purposes. Zeke's royal blood also subjects him to King Fritz's vow if he gained founding Titan, explaining why he never attempted to inherit it, despite his plans requiring its power. Fact 84. The Survey Corps' suicidal charge mentality stems from their mission's inherent deadliness, with every expedition beyond the walls resulting in massive casualties that most soldiers don't survive. The Corps historically lost more soldiers than they gained territory or knowledge, making membership essentially delayed suicide for most recruits. The Shinzo wo Sasageo, dedicate your hearts, motto represents this willingness to sacrifice lives for humanity's future, however slim the chance of meaningful progress. The charge mentality reaches its apex during Erwin's final command at Shiganshina, where he leads doomed cavalry charge knowing everyone, including himself, will die to create opening for Levi. This willingness to accept death distinguishes Survey Corps from other military branches that prioritize survival and security over mission success. The suicidal nature of Survey Corps service makes their volunteers either idealists who genuinely believe in humanity's freedom, or desperate people with nothing left to lose, with most falling somewhere between these extremes. Fact 85. The Wings of Freedom symbol, representing Survey Corps, embodies their mission to reclaim humanity's stolen freedom and fly beyond the cage of walls. The wings represent humanity's desire to soar above their confined existence, to achieve freedom through exploration and understanding, rather than cowering behind barriers. The blue and white wings appear on Survey Corps cloaks, creating distinctive identity separate from other military branches and symbolizing their unique role. The symbol becomes iconic within the series, representing not just military unit but broader themes about freedom's value and the sacrifices necessary to achieve it. The wing's significance deepens as characters learn that literal oceans lie beyond walls, making the flight imagery represent journey to worlds they couldn't imagine. The wings of freedom ultimately represent the Survey Corps' spirit, refusing to accept humanity's caged existence and willing to die trying to break free, embodying show's central question about whether freedom is worth any cost. Fact 86. ODM gear mechanics rely on gas-powered propulsion system that launches soldiers between grappling points, creating three-dimensional movement through urban or forest environments where Titans can be fought. The gear uses compressed gas stored in canisters to power both the grappling hooks that anchor to surfaces and the reeling mechanism that pulls soldiers toward those anchor points. The dual blade system uses disposable ultra-hard steel blades that can slice Titan flesh, with soldiers carrying multiple replacement blades since they dull or break during combat. Operating the gear requires using both hands independently to fire left and right anchors while managing gas consumption and blade replacement, creating extremely high cognitive load during high-speed combat. The gear's complexity means years of training are necessary before soldiers can fight effectively, with many washing out because they cannot master the balance, spatial awareness, and multitasking required. ODM gear represents humanity's ingenuity in creating technology that lets them compete against biologically superior enemies, though it requires exceptional human ability to use effectively. Fact 87. Thunder Spear's development during the story represents humanity's advancement beyond blades as sole anti-Titan weapon, creating explosive projectiles that can damage hardened Titan surfaces. The spears fire like rockets, attaching to Titans before exploding with force, capable of penetrating the armored Titan's plating or destroying hardening that blades cannot cut. Thunder Spears' development shows Paradise's rapid military innovation once they understood the enemy better and had specific hard targets to counter. The weapon's drawback is they're dangerous to users, with close-range explosions potentially killing the person who fired them if they don't create sufficient distance after launching. The Thunder Spears prove crucial during the battle to reclaim Wall Maria, particularly in defeating the colossal Titan by destroying its nape with concentrated explosive fire. The weapon's introduction demonstrates how necessity drives innovation, with humanity creating new tools specifically designed to counter enemies that their old weapons couldn't defeat, showing adaptation in warfare where technological development directly responds to enemy capabilities that previous weapons cannot adequately address. Fact 88. Formation tactics in Titan territory involve long-range scouting formations where the Survey Corps spreads across wide area to detect Titans early and reroute around them. The formation uses soldiers as relay points who fire colored flares to signal Titan locations: red for normal Titans, green for changing direction, black for abnormals, allowing the formation to adjust course without everyone seeing threats directly. Irwin designed these formations to minimize casualties by avoiding combat when possible, prioritizing reaching objectives over engaging every Titan encountered. The center of formation where leadership travels remains protected by multiple layers of soldiers who can respond to threats before they reach commanders. The formation's effectiveness depends on soldiers following protocol even when isolated, trusting that distant comrades will see their signals and respond appropriately. The tactical sophistication demonstrates that the Survey Corps aren't just brave but smart, using coordination and communication to survive against overwhelming odds, rather than relying purely on individual heroics. Fact 89. The 57th Expedition disaster showcases the female Titan's first appearance and the devastating losses the Survey Corps suffers trying to capture it. Irwin's plan to use the formation to protect Eren while luring the female Titan into a trap in the forest of giant trees demonstrates his tactical thinking and willingness to sacrifice soldiers for strategic objectives. The expedition results in massive casualties as the female Titan cuts through formations, kills Levi's squad, and ultimately escapes capture despite the trap's partial success. The disaster shows the Survey Corps' vulnerability even with good planning, as unexpected variables like the female Titan's intelligence and abilities can devastate carefully prepared operations. The expedition's failure to capture the female Titan while losing dozens of soldiers represents the harsh reality of fighting intelligent enemies rather than mindless Titans, where plans can fail despite perfect execution when enemy adapts faster than anticipated. Fact 90. Erwin's sacrifice at Shiganshina represents his final gamble, accepting certain death to lead doomed cavalry charge against the Beast Titan's boulder barrage. The suicide charge creates brief distraction that allows Levi to approach and defeat Zeke, potentially saving humanity's counterattack from complete failure. Erwin's choice to die before learning the truth about the outside world, the driving question of his entire life, makes his sacrifice especially tragic and selfless. His decision to die with his soldiers rather than sending them while staying safe demonstrates his leadership philosophy that commanders must share their subordinates' risks. The charge itself is futile militarily, with everyone knowing they'll die without harming the enemy, making it pure sacrifice to create opportunity for Levi's attack. Erwin's death represents the theme of leaders making terrible choices, sacrificing others and themselves for goals that might justify those deaths only if they succeed, embodying the devil's bargain he references earlier about becoming monster if it means saving humanity. Fact 91. Hange becoming commander after Erwin's death represents burden passing to someone unprepared for it, with Hange's scientific curiosity and idealism ill-suited to role requiring ruthless pragmatism. Hange's leadership style contrasts sharply with Erwin's calculating coldness, as Hange genuinely cares about every life lost, rather than viewing casualties as acceptable costs. Their struggle with command decisions, particularly regarding how to respond to Marley and whether to support Aaron's plans, shows how leadership forces compromises of principles. Hange's exhaustion and despair become visible as they realize their idealistic hopes for peace are impossible in the world's current state of mutual hatred. Their final mission, leading the Survey Corps while knowing they're outmatched, represents Hange's acceptance that their dream of understanding and coexistence died, leaving only duty to protect those who might create better future. Hange's character demonstrates how war consumes even the most optimistic souls, transforming scientific curiosity into weary pragmatism and eventually suicidal last stands. Fact 92. The Ocean Discovery Mission represents humanity's first journey to Paradise Island's coast and confirmation that the world beyond the walls exists exactly as captured memories suggested. Seeing the ocean represents achieving Armin's childhood dream and completing humanity's journey from believing they were alone to understanding their part of larger world. The ocean's beauty and vastness contrast with Aaron's grim realization that enemies exist across that sea, making the discovery bittersweet. The scene represents transition point in the story from humanity surviving against Titans to understanding their real enemies are other humans who hate them. The beach scene's famous moment, Aaron asking if killing all enemies across the ocean would finally make them free, foreshadows his later decisions and introduces the moral complexity that defines the remaining story. The ocean represents both accomplishment and new terror, showing how each answer raises new questions and how solving immediate problems reveals larger, more intractable conflicts that simple victory cannot resolve. Fact 93. Sacrificing humanity for victory represents the Survey Corps' evolution from defending humanity to becoming willing to commit atrocities if it means Paradise's survival. This philosophy shift occurs as they learn about Marley and realize survival might require killing thousands or millions of enemy humans. The moral complexity of this position, willingness to be monsters if being monsters achieves goals, echoes Erwin's earlier devil bargain philosophy. The Survey Corps members struggle with this transformation from heroes defending humanity to soldiers willing to attack other nations preemptively. Characters like Hange resist this evolution while others like Aaron embrace it, creating internal conflict about what methods are acceptable in pursuit of survival. The willingness to sacrifice humanity's broader survival for Paradis specifically represents tribalism overcoming universal humanism, showing how in-group loyalty can justify atrocities against outgroups when survival seems at stake. Fact 94. The Scout Regiment's evolution from exploration force to political revolutionaries occurs during the Uprising arc, when they overthrow the false government and install Historia as queen. This transformation shows how military units can become political actors when civilian government becomes obstacle to survival rather than protector of the people. The coup represents Survey Corps becoming what they once defended against force, using violence to impose will on others, though they justify it as necessary to save humanity from government's fatal incompetence. The evolution continues as Survey Corps becomes Paradis's primary military force conducting operations abroad, transforming from scouts into soldiers fighting conventional war. The regiment's changing role demonstrates how organizations adapt to circumstances, abandoning original missions when situation demands different capabilities, showing both flexibility necessary for survival and loss of original purpose that makes veterans question whether their organization still represents values they joined to serve. Fact 95. Political coup against the false king represents Survey Corps, stepping beyond military role into direct political action, using force to overthrow government they view as obstacle to humanity's survival. The coup targets the fake king and noble families who controlled government, while the real royal Rice family remained hidden, exposing the conspiracy that kept humanity ignorant. The uprising involves minimal violence, as most government forces surrender when confronted with truth about Titans and outside world, showing regime's weakness once lies are exposed. The coup's success installs Historia as queen, creating government willing to use founding Titans' power for defense rather than accepting destruction through pacifism. The political revolution demonstrates how military forces can justify overthrowing civilian leadership when that leadership is demonstrably sacrificing people through malice or incompetence, though it also sets dangerous precedent about military forces deciding when civilian authority is illegitimate. Fact 96. Alliances with former enemies, particularly with warriors, Reiner, Annie, and others joining forces against Eren, represent the story's ultimate statement about breaking cycles through cooperation. These alliances require characters to fight alongside people who killed their friends and families, demanding they prioritize stopping greater evil over personal vengeance. The alliance formation shows characters choosing principle over emotion, recognizing that revenge matters less than preventing genocide regardless of who commits it. The alliance's internal tensions and difficulties demonstrate how easily these cooperations could fail, with characters struggling to work with those they hate. The alliance ultimately represents hope that cycles can break, that enemies can become allies when faced with threats that transcend their individual conflicts, showing that change requires difficult choices to cooperate with those who wronged you for sake of preventing worse outcomes. Fact 97. The raid on Liberio represents Paradis's first offensive operation against Marley, with Eren infiltrating the internment zone and attacking during the Tiber festival. The attack kills Willy Tiber during his declaration of war against Paradis, along with military leadership and countless civilians caught in the destruction. Eren's transformation inside the internment zone and his consumption of the Warhammer Titan represent his willingness to massacre civilians, including Eldians, to achieve tactical objectives. The raid succeeds militarily by crippling Marley's leadership and capturing the Warhammer Titan, but creates moral horror as Survey Corps members realize they've become invaders committing atrocities against populated areas. The Liberio raid represents point of no return, where Paradis becomes aggressors rather than victims, with characters' reactions ranging from Aaron's cold acceptance to others' horror at what they've become, demonstrating how war transforms defenders into attackers when survival demands preemptive violence. Fact 98. Moral complexity of their actions haunts Survey Corps members, who increasingly question whether their methods are justified and whether they've become the monsters they once fought against. Characters debate whether killing innocents to protect their own innocent people makes them murderers or survivors doing what's necessary in an impossible situation. The moral ambiguity intensifies as they learn enemy soldiers and civilians aren't devils but ordinary people taught to hate Eldians just as they were taught to hate Marleans. The complexity creates internal divisions where some like Aaron embrace necessary evil, while others like Armin agonize over every violent act they commit. The story refuses to provide easy answers about who's right, instead showing how everyone believes they're defending their people while committing atrocities against others. This moral complexity represents the series' refusal to simplify war into good versus evil, instead showing how cycles of violence create situations where everyone is simultaneously victim and perpetrator, making moral certainty impossible. Fact 99. Ymir Fritz made the original contract with the source of all organic matter 2,000 years before the story begins, gaining Titan powers that would curse her descendants forever. Ymir's contract occurred when she was an enslaved girl fleeing punishment, falling into tree and encountering the spine-like entity that fused with her body. Her transformation into the first Titan made her valuable weapon for the Eldian tribe she'd been enslaved by, particularly King Fritz, who used her powers for conquest. The contract's nature remains mysterious, with the source of organic matter being unexplained supernatural or alien entity whose motivations are unknown. Ymir's deal represents original sin of the Eldian people, the moment when they gained power that would enable 2,000 years of conquest and oppression. The contract binding Ymir created Path's dimension and connected all her descendants through supernatural network that transcends time and space, making every subsequent Eldian's existence dependent on that original terrible bargain in the forest 2 millennia ago. Fact 100. 2,000 years of slavery to the royal family defines Ymir's existence, as even after her death she remains bound to obey Fritz's dynasty through Path's dimension. Ymir's service to King Fritz continued, despite his cruelty and his responsibility for injuries that killed her, showing her traumatic devotion to the man who enslaved and impregnated her. Her obedience extended through death, with Ymir's consciousness trapped in Path's dimension where she builds Titan bodies from sand for 2,000 years, serving royal commands without question. The slavery represents ultimate expression of how abuse victims can be conditioned to serve their abusers even when escape becomes possible. Ymir's perpetual servitude created the royal family's power, as they could command Titans through her continued obedience even after her physical death. The 2,000 years of slavery make Ymir perhaps the series' greatest victim, showing how single person's trauma and exploitation could echo across millennia, affecting billions who came after her, and creating entire world's power structure based on one woman's inability to recognize she could refuse. And so we close this second part of our journey through Attack on Titan's world, having ventured beyond the walls to discover Marley, having understood the Ackerman bloodline's significance, having witnessed the Survey Corps' transformation from heroes to morally compromised soldiers, and having begun to grasp Ymir Fritz's tragedy that underlies everything, we have seen how the story expands from simple survival against monsters into complex exploration of cycles of hatred, historical guilt, and the impossibility of simple justice when everyone has legitimate grievances and everyone has committed atrocities in response to atrocities committed against them. As you drift deeper towards sleep, imagine standing on the ocean shore with Aaron and his friends, seeing the vast water stretching to horizons, understanding now that beyond that beauty lies a world filled with people who hate you, people who have reasons for that hatred, just as you have reasons for hating them, creating endless cycle where no one is purely victim and no one is purely villain, where everyone fights for survival while condemning others for fighting for theirs. Rest now, and tomorrow we'll conclude this journey by exploring the path's dimension, the rumbling, and the story's devastating conclusion about freedom's cost, and whether cycles of hatred can ever truly end, or whether they simply repeat with new faces until someone chooses to stop the wheel, regardless of personal cost. Sleep peacefully despite these dark themes, knowing that even in stories about apocalypse and genocide, there remains hope that understanding might eventually transcend hatred, that individuals might choose differently than their histories demand, that freedom might be found not through destroying enemies, but through breaking cycles that create them. Fact 101. Ymir's original contract with the devil, or source of all organic matter, occurred when she was a young enslaved girl fleeing punishment from the Eldian king. Ymir fell into a strange tree containing a pool of glowing water, where she encountered the spine-like creature that fused with her body, granting Titan powers. This moment 2,000 years ago created the Titans and established the supernatural connection, binding all Eldians through paths. The contract's terms remain mysterious, whether Ymir made conscious choice or was merely victim of circumstance, whether the source sought her specifically or would have bonded with anyone. The event transformed Ymir from powerless slave into ultimate weapon, though her enslavement continued despite her godlike abilities. The contract represents the original sin or curse of Eldian people, the moment their history diverged from other humans through supernatural power that would define and doom them. The source itself remains unexplained alien parasite, supernatural entity, or primordial force, leaving fundamental mystery about Titan power's origin and whether they're magical, biological, or something beyond either category entirely. Fact 102. 2,000 years of slavery define Ymir's existence even after her physical death, as her consciousness remained trapped in Path's dimension serving royal family. Ymir's servitude continued because she never realized she could refuse, conditioned so thoroughly by King Fritz's abuse that obedience became her entire identity. Her role in Paths involved building every Titan body from sand whenever someone transformed, working eternally to fulfill others' commands without rest or reprieve. The slavery persisted because Ymir believed she had to obey, that she had no choice, that her purpose was serving those who claimed authority over her. This 2,000-year enslavement makes Ymir perhaps the series' greatest victim, showing how trauma and conditioning can bind someone even beyond death. The duration demonstrates how single person's exploitation created an entire system of power, with royal families' control over Titans depending entirely on Ymir's continued obedience. Her slavery's length also emphasizes how desperately she wanted someone to free her, waiting 2 millennia for someone to recognize her humanity and tell her she could stop serving those who enslaved her, making her eventual liberation by Aaron both cathartic and tragic. Fact 103. Building Titans in Path's dimension was Ymir's eternal labor, constructing each Titan body from sand whenever someone transformed anywhere in the world. This task required endless repetition across 2,000 years, with Ymir building pure Titans for those injected with spinal fluid and shifter Titans for the 9. The building process shows Ymir as cosmic laborer, whose work sustains entire system of Titan powers, making her architect of all Titan transformations throughout history. The paths dimension where this building occurs exists outside normal time, with Ymir experiencing centuries between moments while also experiencing all moments simultaneously. The sand she uses appears to be fundamental substance of paths, perhaps representing accumulated experiences and lives of all Eldians throughout history. Ymir's building demonstrates how exploitation can continue indefinitely when victim cannot conceive of stopping, when someone is so conditioned to servitude that even unlimited power cannot free them from psychological chains. The endless construction also represents how trauma creates compulsive repetition, with Ymir's building being mechanical action she performs without thought or emotion after millennia of the same task. Fact 104. Time not flowing normally in paths creates disorienting dimension, where past, present, and future exist simultaneously, and where subjective experience doesn't match objective time passage. Years can pass in paths while seconds pass in physical world, or moments in paths can span years outside, depending on perception and purpose. This temporal distortion allows Eren to communicate across time through Attack Titan's future memory ability, creating closed loops where future influences past. The non-linear time means all Eldians throughout history exist simultaneously in paths, making it repository of entire races' collective experience. The strange temporality explains how Ymir can build Titans for millions of transformations. From her perspective, she has infinite time, while from outside perspective, Titan transformation appears instant. The time distortion also represents how trauma affects time perception, with victims experiencing moments of horror as endless, while years of life blur into nothing. Paths' temporal properties make it realm beyond normal physics, where consciousness, rather than matter, is primary substance, suggesting its mental or spiritual dimension rather than physical place. Fact 105. Every Eldian connects through paths across time and space, creating invisible network that binds all subjects of Ymir, regardless of physical distance or temporal separation. This connection explains how Founding Titan can instantly command all Titans and alter all Eldians' memories. Simultaneously, the commands travel through paths faster than light. The connection means every Eldian's experiences, memories, and existence become part of collective repository in paths dimension, making individual lives threads in larger tapestry. The network exists unconsciously for most Eldians who never access paths directly, experiencing only occasional inherited memories or unexplained knowledge. The connection makes Eldians fundamentally different from other humans, bound together through supernatural network that transcends normal biology. This binding creates both community and curse. Eldians share connection other peoples lack, but that same connection enables their transformation into Titans and makes them controllable through Founding Titan. The path's connection represents how identity and community can be both blessing and chains, how being part of something larger than yourself creates belonging but also makes you vulnerable to forces that can manipulate those connections for purposes you might oppose. Fact 106. Ymir's love for King Fritz represents Stockholm Syndrome or trauma bonding, where abuse victim develops attachment to abuser as survival mechanism and confusion about what love means. Ymir loved Fritz despite his cruelty because he was the only person who showed her any attention, because her enslavement conditioned her to seek his approval. Her love was toxic devotion born from abuse rather than healthy affection, making it tragedy rather than romance, despite how she experienced it. The love kept Ymir enslaved even after Fritz's death because she couldn't distinguish between love and servitude, believing serving him and his descendants forever demonstrated her devotion. This twisted love created 2,000 years of suffering, as Ymir's misunderstanding of love bound her to serve people who didn't even know she existed. Her love for Fritz represents how abuse warps victims' understanding of relationships, making them mistake control for care and obedience for affection. The love's revelation makes Ymir sympathetic rather than merely powerful, showing her as traumatized child who never healed from abuse that shaped her entire existence, making her godlike power irrelevant when psychological chains bound her more effectively than any physical restraint. Fact 107. Her daughters forced to eat her body after Ymir's death represents King Fritz's cruelty extending beyond her life into grotesque inheritance ritual. Fritz commanded his daughters to consume their mother's corpse to inherit Titan powers, establishing consumption as method for transferring Titans between hosts. This cannibalism of their own mother traumatized the daughters, while ensuring Titan powers would continue serving Fritz's dynasty. The forced consumption demonstrates Fritz's view of Ymir as property whose value lay entirely in her usefulness as weapon. The daughters eating Ymir's body divided her power into 3 parts, which later subdivided into the 9 Titans through subsequent generations. This origin of Titan inheritance through cannibalism explains the disturbing method by which shifters pass powers. Eating the previous holder's spinal fluid transfers consciousness and abilities. The grotesque ritual represents how trauma reproduces itself across generations, with children forced to perpetuate cycles of horror that victimize their parents, making the daughters both victims of their father's cruelty and participants in a system that would oppress millions. Fact 108. The origin of the 13-year curse came from Ymir dying 13 years after gaining Titan powers, establishing maximum duration anyone can hold a Titan. Ymir's death resulted from injuries sustained protecting King Fritz from assassination attempt, with Fritz showing no gratitude or mourning despite her sacrifice. Her death after exactly 13 years created template that bound all future Titan holders to the same limitation. The curse represents how Ymir's entire existence, even its duration, became law that governed all who came after her. The 13-year limit makes Titan powers simultaneously gift and death sentence, granting immense power while guaranteeing early death. The curse's origin in Ymir's death for an ungrateful king makes it especially tragic, as her sacrifice for someone who didn't value her life became pattern that would doom millions of descendants. The 13 years represents how single person's tragedy can echo through history, creating arbitrary rules that seem natural or inevitable, but actually stem from specific historical moments whose origins are forgotten even as their consequences persist. Fact 109. Paths as dimension of sand and light appears as desert under starry sky, surreal landscape where Ymir builds Titans and where Eldian consciousness occasionally appears. The dimension's aesthetic endless sand, strange light, and cosmic atmosphere suggests it exists outside normal reality in space, defined by consciousness rather than physics. The sand Ymir uses for building Titans might represent collective substance of all Eldian existence, with each grain being a moment, memory, or life from the race's history. The dimension's appearance changes slightly depending on who perceives it and when, suggesting it adapts to observers' consciousness or purpose. The path's realm contains the coordinate, the point where all Eldian connections converge, and from which founding Titan can access entire network. The dimension represents the story's most overtly supernatural element, requiring acceptance, that something beyond science exists in Attack on Titan's world. Path's existence suggests consciousness is fundamental reality that can exist independent of physical bodies, with the dimension being place where minds meet across time and space without physical constraints. Fact 110. Eren freeing Ymir from bondage occurs in Paths when he tells her she doesn't have to obey, that she can choose for herself, recognizing her as person rather than tool. This liberation comes 2,000 years into her slavery, when Eren becomes first person to see her pain and acknowledge her agency. Eren's words break Ymir's psychological chains by offering what no one else did, recognition that she has choice, that she doesn't owe obedience to anyone. His freeing of Ymir represents how breaking cycles requires recognizing humanity in those the system treats as objects or tools. Ymir's response to Eren's liberation, choosing to follow his plan for the rumbling, shows her freedom doesn't necessarily lead to moral choices. That freed victim might choose vengeance over mercy. The liberation scene represents the story's most pivotal moment, as Ymir's choice to stop obeying royal family and follow Eren instead enables everything that follows. Eren freeing Ymir demonstrates that real change requires addressing root causes rather than symptoms, that ending Titan powers required freeing the person who created them rather than just killing more Titans or defeating more enemies. Fact 111. Ymir choosing Mikasa's path represents her recognizing in Mikasa someone who could do what she couldn't, kill the person they love, to end a cycle of suffering. Ymir watches Mikasa throughout history through paths, seeing her devotion to Eren and waiting to see whether Mikasa can transcend that devotion when necessary. Mikasa's eventual choice to kill Eren despite loving him shows Ymir that love doesn't require slavery, that you can love someone while refusing to enable their worst actions. This demonstration of healthy love versus Ymir's toxic devotion to Fritz finally allows Ymir to let go of her attachment and end Titan powers. Ymir's choice to follow Mikasa's example, rather than Eren's commands, shows her learning what love actually means after 2,000 years of confusion. The connection between Ymir and Mikasa represents how women separated by millennia can face similar struggles with love, devotion, and the question of whether loyalty means supporting someone no matter what they do. Ymir choosing Mikasa's path demonstrates that breaking cycles requires someone demonstrating different choice as possible, that seeing another person transcend what seemed impossible gives permission to do the same. Fact 112. The founder Ymir's true desire for freedom was buried under 2,000 years of conditioning, but never completely destroyed, waiting for someone to recognize it. Ymir wanted freedom but couldn't conceive of taking it because her entire existence as slave taught her that freedom wasn't for her. Her desire manifested in how she responded to Eren, whose own desire for freedom resonated with her buried wishes. The desire's persistence, despite millennia of suppression, shows how fundamental human need for autonomy is, how even ultimate conditioning cannot completely erase the wish to choose for oneself. Ymir's freedom desire makes her relatable despite her godlike power, showing her as person whose fundamental wishes were denied by circumstances and abuse. The tragedy is that she had ultimate power to take freedom but lacked psychological ability to imagine using it, making her simultaneously most powerful and most powerless being in the story. Her true desire's revelation transforms Ymir from mysterious force into sympathetic character, whose suffering created the world's suffering, making her both source of curse and its greatest victim. Fact 113. Past, present, and future existing simultaneously in paths enables Attack Titan's unique ability to see future memories and Aaron's manipulation of events across time. The temporal simultaneity means Aaron can send memories backward to previous Attack Titan holders, influencing their decisions to create outcomes he needs. This creates deterministic loop where future Aaron's actions ensure past events happen exactly as needed to create that future. The simultaneous existence of all moments means free will becomes questionable. Characters believe they're choosing but might be following paths already laid by future influences. The temporal complexity makes Aaron's journey tragic. He sees the rumbling in future memories, and everything he does to prevent it actually causes it, trapping him in predestined path. The past, present, future simultaneity represents how in paths, time is not linear but accessible from any point, making history malleable when viewed from this timeless perspective. This temporal structure explains how Aaron knew what was coming and why he couldn't prevent it, because preventing it would create paradox where he never saw it to prevent it. Fact 114. All Eldian memories stored in paths creates collective repository of entire races' experiences throughout 2,000 years of history. Every Eldian who ever lived had their experiences recorded in paths, making it archive of billions of lives and moments. This storage explains how Founding Titan can access any memory from any Eldian's past, pulling information from this vast repository. The memory storage means nothing is truly forgotten. Every atrocity, kindness, love, and hatred committed by or against Eldians exists permanently in paths. The collective memory makes Eldian identity partially collective rather than purely individual, as each Eldian unconsciously carries fragments of their ancestors' experiences. The storage also explains inherited memories. Sometimes paths repository bleeds through into conscious awareness, giving people knowledge they shouldn't possess. This collective memory represents how history lives in descendants even when consciously forgotten, how trauma and experience pass through generations even without explicit teaching, making past continuously present in ways that shape behavior and identity even when people don't recognize the influence. Fact 115. The source of organic matter that gave Ymir her powers remains mysterious, spine-like creature that might be alien, supernatural entity, or primordial life force. The source appears in the tree where Ymir gained powers and is shown again during Aaron's Founding Titan transformation, suggesting it physically connects to Titan bodies. The creature's origin and nature are never explained, leaving fundamental question unanswered about where Titan powers ultimately come from. The source might be intelligent entity with goals, or might be mindless force that simply is without purpose or consciousness. Its appearance during key moments suggests it plays ongoing role rather than just being historical cause of Titan powers. The mystery of the source represents the story's acceptance that some things don't need explanation, that ultimate origin of the supernatural can remain unknown without invalidating the emotional and thematic story. The source's existence means Titan powers have basis beyond just paths and Ymir, suggesting they tap into something fundamental about life itself that transcends human understanding. Fact 116. Seeing future memories from Grisha changes Aaron's entire worldview, showing him the rumbling and events leading to it before they occur. These memories come in fragments during metal ceremony and crystallize fully when he touches Historia, giving him glimpse of terrible future. The future memories show Aaron things he doesn't want to see, the destruction he'll cause, and the people who'll die because of his choices. Seeing the future traps Aaron in deterministic nightmare, where knowing what happens makes him unable to prevent it, because prevention would create paradox. The memories transform Aaron from reactive protagonist into someone working toward specific apocalyptic goal he saw in visions. His knowledge of the future explains his personality change from passionate but naive to cold and calculating, as he's burdened with knowledge of horrible things he'll do and must do to reach that future. The future memory ability makes Aaron simultaneously most informed and most tragic character, knowing everything that will happen while being unable to change it, because changing it would unmake the future from which he received the memories. Fact 117. Manipulating events toward rumbling becomes Aaron's purpose once he sees it's coming and believes it's necessary for Paradise's survival. Aaron begins pushing away friends, making controversial decisions, and positioning pieces to enable the rumbling he saw in future memories. His manipulation includes influencing his father Grisha through paths to kill the Rice family and take the founding Titan in the first place. Aaron's manipulation extends to orchestrating his own imprisonment, Zeke's arrival, and circumstances that let him access founding Titan's full power. The manipulation shows Aaron becoming villain of his own story, doing terrible things to ensure worse things happen because he believes there's no alternative. His actions demonstrate how seeing the future could corrupt someone, making them believe everything is predetermined and that resistance is futile. The manipulation raises question about whether Aaron truly had no choice, or whether seeing the rumbling made him believe it was only option, creating self-fulfilling prophecy, where his belief in inevitability made the inevitable actually happen. Fact 118. Pushing away friends to protect them represents Aaron's attempt to make them hate him so they won't bear guilt for actions he takes on their behalf. Aaron's cruelty toward Mikasa and Armin comes from desire to make them stop loving him so his eventual death won't hurt them as much. His pushing away also serves strategic purpose. Making them fight against him gives them heroic role that might protect them from world's hatred after rumbling. The rejection of his friends demonstrates Aaron's loneliness and his belief he must walk this path alone, bearing hatred of the entire world, including those he loves. His distance from friends shows how pursuit of freedom through extreme measures costs connection and belonging that give freedom meaning. The pushing away represents Aaron's belief that protecting people sometimes means making them hate you, that love sometimes requires accepting you'll be seen as monster rather than letting loved ones share the moral burden of your terrible choices. Fact 119. The Attack Titan's unique ability to see future inheritors' memories sets it apart from other Titans whose memory inheritance only works backward through past holders. This future memory ability makes Attack Titan special, strategic asset, and explains its name. It always advances toward freedom by seeing what comes next. The ability creates temporal loops where future influence is past, with future Attack Titan holders sending memories backward to guide previous holders' actions. The power explains why Attack Titan was never captured despite lacking obvious combat advantages like other Titans possess. It could always see captors coming. The future sight makes Attack Titan holders simultaneously most informed and most burdened, knowing horrible things coming but being unable to prevent them without creating paradoxes. The ability represents the story's engagement with determinism and free will, questioning whether seeing the future means it's fixed or whether knowledge of future enables changing it, ultimately suggesting that in Attack on Titan's world, time is closed loop, where past, present, and future influence each other in ways that prevent true change. Fact 120. Freedom as Aaron's core motivation drives every decision from childhood dream of seeing the outside world to his final apocalyptic choice. Aaron's desire for freedom is absolutist. He cannot accept any constraints or cages, regardless of whether they're necessary or well-intentioned. His freedom philosophy values liberation above morality, seeing freedom as supreme value that justifies any action taken to achieve it. Aaron's concept of freedom is selfish rather than universal. He wants his people free, even if that means enslaving or destroying others. His freedom pursuit becomes increasingly extreme as he learns the world's constraints are greater than just titans, that other humans, their hatred, and historical circumstances cage him more than walls ever did. Aaron's freedom quest demonstrates how noble-sounding ideals can justify atrocities when taken to extremes, how desire for liberation can become tyrannical when pursued without moral constraints. His character embodies question of whether true freedom is possible and what costs pursuing it might demand, ultimately suggesting that absolute freedom might require becoming absolute monster. Fact 121. The moral complexity of genocide creates the series' central ethical dilemma, whether killing millions to protect smaller population can ever be justified. Aaron's reasoning is logical from one perspective. If the world will destroy parody, destroying the world first is self-defense and protection of his people. However, the planned scale killing innocents, including children who never harmed anyone, makes it obviously monstrous regardless of strategic necessity. The complexity comes from understanding Aaron's reasoning, while recognizing that understandable motivations don't make atrocities acceptable. The story refuses easy answers, showing how both Aaron's rumbling and the world's attack on Paradis are genocidal projects justified by each side as self-defense. The moral complexity demonstrates how cycles of violence create situations where everyone has legitimate grievances and everyone commits atrocities they believe are necessary, making moral certainty impossible. The genocide question asks whether survival of your people justifies exterminating others, ultimately suggesting that while the emotional logic is comprehensible, the moral answer must be no, even when saying no means accepting your own destruction. Fact 122. Aaron's conversation with Zeke in Paths reveals their fundamental disagreement about humanity's value and whether Eldian's continued existence justifies its costs. Zeke proposes euthanasia plan that would sterilize all Eldians, allowing current generation to live while ending the race peacefully without reproduction. Aaron rejects this solution as unacceptable cage, another way of stealing freedom by preventing Eldians from having futures or children. Their debate represents two responses to seemingly impossible situations: Zeke's pragmatic acceptance of ending their people to prevent further suffering versus Aaron's refusal to accept any solution that constrains Eldian freedom. The conversation shows both characters were manipulating each other, with each believing they understood the other's true goals while actually pursuing contradictory plans. Their disagreement, despite working together, demonstrates how allies can have fundamentally incompatible philosophies while temporarily cooperating toward goals that seem aligned. The Paths conversation reveals Aaron's true plan wasn't limited, rumbling for defense, but complete omnicide to ensure no one who hates Eldians survives to threaten them. Fact 123. Rejecting euthanasia plan shows Aaron valuing Eldian freedom and future over peaceful extinction, even if continuing to exist means causing suffering to the world. Aaron's rejection demonstrates his belief that existence itself is valuable, that choosing not to exist is unacceptable even if existing means conflict and pain. His refusal represents vitalist philosophy, where life and freedom trump peace, if peace requires non-existence or surrender. The rejection also shows Aaron's selfishness. He won't accept solutions that prevent his people from being free, even if those solutions prevent greater harm. Zeke's euthanasia plan was actually merciful compared to what Aaron chooses, making Aaron's rejection the moment he commits to path of maximum destruction. The plan's rejection reveals Aaron's priorities. He values Eldian ability to reproduce and have futures more than he values all other human lives combined. This rejection marks point where Aaron's character becomes undeniably villainous, choosing mass murder over peaceful ending because peaceful ending doesn't satisfy his definition of freedom. Fact 124. Starting the rumbling to protect parity represents Aaron's final choice to commit global genocide rather than accept any future where his people might be destroyed. The rumbling begins when Aaron accesses Founding Titan's full power through contact with Zeke and Ymir's cooperation, awakening all Wall Titans simultaneously. The initial justification is self-defense. The world declared war on Paradis and was assembling to attack, making strikes seemingly necessary for survival. However, the rumbling scale trampling everything beyond parity reveals it's not limited defensive action, but complete destruction of outside world. Aaron's decision shows how fear can justify ultimate evil, how protective impulses toward your people can become genocidal toward everyone else. The rumbling represents Aaron's answer to the cycle of hatred, destroying everyone who hates his people so thoroughly that no one remains to continue the cycle. His choice demonstrates how someone pursuing freedom and protection can become history's greatest monster, showing that good intentions and understandable motivations don't prevent or excuse atrocities when actions destroy most of humanity. Fact 125. Becoming the villain for his friends represents Aaron's belief that his actions will unite the world against him and make his friends who stop him into heroes. Aaron's plan includes his own death at his friends' hands, giving them credit for saving the world's survivors while protecting Paradis from immediate retaliation. His willingness to be hated and killed shows twisted self-sacrifice, where he takes on world's hatred to give his friends better future. The villain role means Aaron must push away everyone he loves, dying alone and despised rather than surrounded by people who understand him. His acceptance of this role demonstrates how he's surrendered happiness for what he believes is necessary, choosing to be remembered as Monster if being Monster achieves his goals. The plan's manipulation of his friends, making them kill him for purpose they don't fully understand, shows Aaron's willingness to use even those he loves as tools. Becoming the villain represents Aaron's final evolution from hero who fights monsters to monster who believes his monstrosity serves heroic purpose, completing his tragic arc from freedom-seeking child to freedom-destroying apocalypse, who dies believing his genocide somehow protected freedom for those who survive. Fact 126. Wall Titans awakening worldwide begins the rumbling, with millions of colossal titans emerging from all three walls and beginning their march across the globe. The awakening creates apocalyptic scene as walls that protected humanity for centuries reveal their true nature as dormant army. The Titans' emergence destroys districts built against the walls, killing many Paradis citizens in the initial release, despite the rumbling being supposedly for their protection. The awakened Titans march in organized formations, moving unstoppably toward the ocean and the continents beyond. The awakening demonstrates the walls were always weapons waiting to be deployed, that humanity's protection was simultaneously their greatest threat held in suspended animation. The scale of the awakening millions of 60-meter titans moving simultaneously creates truly apocalyptic scenario that no military force could hope to stop through conventional means. The Wall Titan's emergence represents Aaron's complete rejection of the cage that protected humanity, destroying the walls themselves to weaponize what they contained, making protection into destruction and sanctuary into weapon. Fact 127. Millions of colossal titans marching, creates unstoppable wall of destruction that tramples everything in its path without mercy or discrimination. The Titan's march is methodical and complete, leaving no structure standing and no living thing surviving in territories they cross. The colossal Titan's size means each step crushes houses, their bodies destroy entire city blocks, and their passage leaves only flattened wasteland. The march continues day and night without pause, as colossal Titans don't tire, and Aaron's control keeps them moving toward their targets. The methodical nature of destruction makes it more horrifying than sudden. Attack people can see the Titans coming, but cannot stop or escape them. The march represents industrialized genocide, systematic destruction that processes entire continents as efficiently as factory production line. The millions of Titans ensure complete coverage of all territories beyond Paradis, making the rumbling truly global apocalypse rather than limited strike. The marching demonstrates how Aaron's rumbling isn't hot, passionate violence, but cold, calculated destruction, making it all the more disturbing for its mechanical efficiency and completeness. Fact 128. 80% of humanity trampled represents the rumbling's ultimate casualty count after the Alliance stops Aaron before completing global genocide. This staggering death toll means billions of people were crushed, making Aaron responsible for largest mass murder in human history. The 80% figure leaves survivors but destroys most of human civilization, creating apocalyptic wasteland in formerly populated areas. The partial completion means Aaron's plan both succeeds and fails. Paradis is protected by terror of what happened while enough humanity survives to potentially rebuild and eventually seek revenge. The specific percentage creates moral complexity. Stopping Aaron saved 20%, but that meant accepting 80%'s death, making heroes complicit in allowing partial genocide to save remainder. The death toll demonstrates the rumbling's efficiency. The relatively short time before the Alliance stopped, Aaron still resulted in unimaginable destruction because millions of colossal Titans moving simultaneously could trample continents quickly. The 80% represents how partially stopping genocide still means participating in genocide, making everyone involved in stopping Aaron carry guilt for the billions who died before they succeeded in killing him. Fact 129. The alliance forming against Aaron brings together Paradis soldiers and Marleyan warriors who were enemies, united by shared goal of stopping the rumbling. The alliance requires former enemies to fight alongside people who killed their friends and family, demanding they prioritize stopping greater evil over personal vengeance. Members include Survey Corps remnants, the warrior unit survivors, and former antagonists, now working together against Aaron. The alliance formation shows how existential threats can create temporary unity even between groups with incompatible interests and deep hatred. The cooperation is fragile and contentious, with members constantly debating whether they're traitors to their peoples or doing what's necessary despite the personal cost. The alliance represents hope that cycles can break through cooperation, but also demonstrates how difficult such cooperation is when trust is non-existent and grievances are legitimate and fresh. The formation against Aaron makes him the ultimate antagonist, so threatening that everyone, regardless of faction, must unite to stop him, making him truly the enemy of the entire world. Fact 130. Former enemies working together creates constant tension as the alliance members struggle to cooperate despite personal hatred and recent history of trying to kill each other. Reiner and Annie working with people whose families they killed creates unbearable emotional weight and practical difficulty. The alliance requires Jean, Connie, and others to fight alongside warriors who destroyed their homes and killed their comrades during the initial wall breaching. The cooperation demands everyone's suppressed desire for revenge and personal justice for the sake of stopping Aaron's rumbling. The tension manifests in arguments, distrust, and moments where alliance nearly fractures from inability to overcome past atrocities. The alliance's success, despite these obstacles, shows that cooperation is possible even in seemingly impossible situations, though it also shows how painful and difficult such cooperation is when wounds are fresh and grievances legitimate. The alliance demonstrates that breaking cycles requires accepting injustice. The warriors who murdered thousands won't face justice because they're needed to stop Aaron, creating pragmatic but morally unsatisfying compromise where practical necessity overrides emotional justice. Fact 131. The final battle at Fort Salta represents humanity's last stand against the rumbling, with the Alliance desperately fighting to reach and stop Aaron. The battle features colossal titans approaching the fort where refugees have gathered, creating race against time to stop Aaron before the rumbling reaches the concentration of surviving humanity. The fight showcases all Alliance members using their abilities. Titan shifters transforming repeatedly, Ackermans fighting at superhuman levels, soldiers using ODM gear and thunder spears against impossible odds. The battle includes tragic moments like Hange's sacrifice burning, approaching colossal titans to buy time for others, demonstrating the costs of stopping Aaron. The Founder's appearance as massive skeletal titan, with Aaron's head attached, creates disturbing final boss for the Alliance to overcome. The battle represents desperation, everyone knowing they have one chance to stop the rumbling before humanity's remnant is destroyed, making failure unthinkable but victory seemingly impossible. The final battle demonstrates that stopping genocide requires being willing to die trying, that sometimes all you can do is fight even when winning seems impossible, because not fighting guarantees everyone loses. Fact 132. Mikasa's choice to kill Aaron represents her transcending her devotion to him, choosing to stop the person she loves because his actions have become unforgivable, regardless of his motivations. Her decision demonstrates love doesn't mean enabling someone's worst acts, that sometimes love requires stopping those you care about even if it means their death. Mikasa's choice is agony for her. Killing Aaron means destroying the center of her world, the person who saved her and whom she dedicated her life to protect. Her ability to kill him despite this devotion shows growth from codependency toward understanding that love sometimes means saying no, even when it costs everything. The act of decapitating Aaron inside his founding titan's mouth represents ultimate rejection of his path while still loving him as person separate from his actions. Mikasa's choice fulfills what Ymir was watching for: proof that someone could love while still refusing to enable that loved one's evil, demonstrating healthy love versus the toxic devotion Ymir showed King Fritz. Her choice to kill Aaron demonstrates that breaking cycles requires individuals making impossible choices that betray their own hearts for sake of broader good, showing that sometimes love means letting go even when every instinct screams to hold on. Fact 133. Ymir, witnessing love transcending devotion through Mikasa's choice to kill Aaron, finally allows her to let go of her toxic attachment to King Fritz. Ymir recognizes in Mikasa's action what she could never do, loving someone while rejecting their cruelty, demonstrating that love doesn't require servitude or acceptance of abuse. Seeing Mikasa kill Aaron shows Ymir that strength to reject loved ones when they're wrong is compatible with genuine love, unlike her belief that love meant total obedience. This witnessing releases Ymir from her 2,000-year bondage because she finally understands that she didn't owe Fritz continued service, that her love was misplaced and her obedience unnecessary. Ymir's release comes from seeing a healthier model of love, where devotion has limits and where caring about someone doesn't mean enabling their worst acts or sacrificing yourself completely. The witnessing demonstrates how seeing someone else make choice you couldn't make can give permission to finally release burdens you've carried, showing that sometimes we need examples of what's possible before we can imagine doing it ourselves. Ymir's liberation through Mikasa represents how breaking cycles requires showing alternative paths, demonstrating that different choices are possible and that love can exist without slavery. Fact 134. The end of Titan powers occurs when Ymir, finally freed from her psychological slavery, allows the curse to end and releases all Eldians from their connection to Titans. The power's end means no new transformations are possible, that existing pure Titans revert to human form, and that the 13-year curse no longer claims shifters' lives. The end liberates all Eldians from their defining curse, the possibility of transformation that made them feared and persecuted throughout the world. The power's ending represents Ymir's final act of will after 2,000 years, choosing to stop maintaining system that enslaved her and everyone connected to her. The end means Eren's death truly ends the Titan Age, rather than just killing one holder while powers transfer to newborn Eldians somewhere. The Titan power's ending demonstrates that real change requires addressing root causes. No amount of fighting individual Titans or defeating specific enemies could end the curse. Only freeing Ymir herself allowed the system to finally end. The ending shows that supernatural curses require supernatural solutions, that sometimes problems can't be solved through force, but only through healing the trauma that created them in the first place. Fact 135. Eren's death, freeing the world from Titans while also removing the threat he represented, creates complicated aftermath where his actions' morality remains debated. His death at Mikasa's hands means he doesn't live to see whether his plan succeeded in protecting Paradis long-term, or whether 80%'s death was pointless tragedy. Eren dying means never facing consequences or judgment for his genocide, being killed mid-action rather than being held accountable after. His death creates martyrdom that some on Paradis embrace, viewing him as tragic hero who sacrificed himself for their safety. The death also protects Eren from having to live with guilt over billions he killed, making it escape rather than justice for his victims. Eren dying means he gets what he wanted, in some ways freedom from the cycle and from his own burdened existence, while leaving others to deal with consequences of his choices. His death represents ambiguous victory. World is saved from complete destruction, but cost was unconscionable, and debate continues about whether Eren was villain, hero, or victim of circumstance beyond his control. His death freeing the world suggests that sometimes the person who causes the problem's end is necessary for the solution, making his death both punishment and salvation, justice and tragedy, making his final role as complex and morally ambiguous as everything else in Attack on Titan's refusal to provide simple answers about right and wrong. Fact 136. The cycle of hatred and revenge defines Attack on Titan's core theme, showing how violence perpetuates itself across generations, with each side justifying their actions as response to previous atrocities. The cycle shows Eldian Empire oppressing the world, leading to Marley oppressing Eldians after gaining power, leading to Paradis attacking Marley after learning the truth, leading to Eren attempting to destroy the world before it destroys Paradis. Each generation inherits hatred from parents, learning to hate people they've never met for things that happened before they were born, making the cycle self-perpetuating. The revenge aspect means every action has justification. Everyone is responding to real harm. Everyone is defending their people from genuine threats, making moral certainty impossible. The cycle demonstrates how collective guilt and tribal thinking poison any possibility of peace, as individuals are judged and punished for their ancestors' actions. Breaking the cycle requires someone choosing to stop despite having legitimate grievances, accepting injustice rather than perpetuating violence, making cycle-breaking demand almost superhuman moral courage and willingness to be vulnerable. The cycle of hatred shows that as long as people respond to violence with violence, teaching their children to hate the children of their enemies, the cycle will continue indefinitely regardless of who wins individual battles, making peace impossible until someone chooses differently despite personal cost. Fact 137. Children leaving the forest metaphor represents growing beyond cycles of hatred and revenge that trap humanity in eternal conflict. The forest symbolizes the cycle where everyone is predator and prey, where you must kill or be killed, where moral complexity is ignored for simple survival logic. Leaving the forest means transcending this mentality, recognizing enemies as humans rather than monsters, choosing peace even when violence seems necessary. The metaphor suggests children next generation are key to breaking cycles because they're not yet fully indoctrinated into their society's hatreds. However, the story shows how difficult leaving the forest is, with adult prejudices passed to children who then perpetuate the same conflicts their parents fought. The forest metaphor appears in context of warrior cadets, children trained to fight and hate, showing how societies deliberately keep children in the forest for military purposes. Leaving the forest requires rejecting everything your society teaches about enemies, essentially committing cultural treason by refusing to hate those you're told to hate. The metaphor demonstrates that breaking cycles requires more than wanting peace. It requires systematic refusal to teach hatred to children, consciously choosing to let cycles end with you rather than passing violence to next generation. Fact 138. Freedom's true cost emerges as central question whether freedom is worth genocide, whether liberation justifies atrocity, whether being free to choose includes being free to choose wrong. Aaron's pursuit of freedom costs billions of lives, revealing that absolute freedom for some requires death for others who might threaten that freedom. The cost question asks whether freedom has inherent value, or whether it's only valuable within moral constraints that prevent it from becoming tyranny. The story shows freedom as double-edged. It's worth fighting for, but can justify anything when pursued without moral limits. The cost reveals that freedom for in-group often means oppression or death for outgroups, that one people's liberation is another's existential threat. The true cost includes not just lives lost, but moral corruption of those who pursue freedom through atrocity, showing how means can corrupt ends regardless of how noble goals seem. Freedom's cost in Attack on Titan suggests that liberation pursued without wisdom or compassion becomes its own tyranny, that freedom without responsibility is just license to harm others without consequence. The cost ultimately suggests freedom is valuable but not supreme value that overrides all others, that sometimes accepting constraints is wiser than destroying everything to be free. Fact 139. The cruelty and beauty of the world represents Armin and Aaron's different perspectives on existence and whether life is worth living despite suffering. Armin sees world's beauty, oceans, deserts, frozen lands, human connection, and believes these wonders justify existence despite its cruelty. Aaron sees world's cruelty, oppression, hatred, cycles of violence, and decides this ugly world doesn't deserve to exist if it threatens his people's freedom. The tension between these views drives their different choices, with Armin seeking preservation and understanding, while Eren chooses destruction and control. The cruelty and beauty existing simultaneously means neither perspective is wrong. World genuinely contains both wonder and horror, making questions about whether existence is worthwhile fundamentally subjective. The phrase represents the story's refusal to simplify reality into good or bad, instead acknowledging that life contains both beauty worth preserving and cruelty worth condemning. The world's dual nature makes morality complex. Cruel world might deserve destruction, but beautiful world deserves preservation, making Eren and Armin both right depending on which aspect you emphasize. The cruelty and beauty ultimately suggests that wise response to world's ambiguity is neither Eren's destruction nor naive optimism, but rather Armin's clear-eyed appreciation that acknowledges both aspects while choosing to value beauty without denying cruelty's reality. Fact 140. Moral ambiguity. With no pure heroes defines Attack on Titan's refusal to simplify its characters into good guys and bad guys, instead showing everyone as complex individuals, doing terrible things for understandable reasons. The story presents Eren as protagonist turned antagonist, Reiner as antagonist turned sympathetic figure, Survey Corps as heroes who commit atrocities, Marley and warriors as victims who victimize others. No character is purely good. Everyone kills innocents. Everyone makes choices that harm others. Everyone prioritizes their people over broader humanity. The ambiguity means viewer sympathy constantly shifts as you understand different perspectives and see how each character's actions make sense from their viewpoint. The story refuses to tell you who's right, instead presenting conflicts where both sides have legitimate grievances and both sides commit atrocities, making judgment impossible without arbitrarily favoring one group. The lack of pure heroes means traditional heroic narrative is subverted. No character can save the world without getting blood on their hands. No resolution exists that satisfies everyone or that avoids tragedy. The moral ambiguity represents sophisticated storytelling that respects audiences' ability to handle complexity, refusing to simplify human conflict into easily digestible good versus evil narrative when reality involves everyone doing both good and evil, depending on perspective. Fact 141. War's impact on children appears throughout Attack on Titan in the warrior candidates, Gabby's indoctrination, Falco's innocence lost, and the 12-year-olds defending Paradis. The children forced to become warriors demonstrate how societies sacrifice their young, turning children into weapons before they're old enough to understand what's being done to them. Gabi's character shows how thoroughly children can be indoctrinated, believing propaganda so completely that she volunteers to become hero by committing violence against enemies she's taught to hate. The warrior candidate's competition for Titan inheritance shows children eagerly pursuing early death because they've been conditioned to view sacrifice for Marley as highest honor. Falco represents innocence trying to survive in a world that destroys innocence, showing how war corrupts even those who try to stay pure. The story's focus on child soldiers demonstrates how adults' conflicts consume the next generation, making children pay for adults' failures to create peace. The impact on children represents the story's most unforgivable element. Regardless of which side you support, all factions are guilty of destroying childhood by forcing children to fight wars they didn't start and don't understand, making everyone complicit in victimizing the innocent. Fact 142. Breaking cycles through sacrifice represents the story's suggestion that ending hatred requires someone accepting loss without seeking revenge, stopping the cycle even when you have power to continue it. Sasha's father choosing not to seek revenge against Gabi demonstrates individual cycle breaking, refusing to perpetuate violence despite his daughter's murder. The alliance formation represents collective sacrifice, where both sides accept working with enemies and accepting that justice for past wrongs won't happen for the sake of preventing future wrongs. Aaron's death itself represents sacrifice, whether his or Mikasa's, depending on perspective, that ends Titan powers and the cycle they enabled. The sacrifice theme suggests breaking cycles isn't free. Someone must lose something they're entitled to. Someone must accept injustice without retribution. Someone must suffer without making others suffer in response. The breaking requires recognizing that your pain doesn't justify causing pain to others, that your legitimate grievances don't obligate you to seek revenge, that you can choose to be the person where the cycle stops. The sacrifice demonstrates that breaking cycles is heroic, precisely because it requires self-denial and acceptance of unfairness, making it harder and more meaningful than perpetuating violence would be. Fact 143. Love as path to freedom emerges in how genuine love, Mikasa's willingness to stop Eren, Armin's refusal to abandon Eren despite his actions, the Alliance's choice to protect enemies' children provides way out of hatred's cycle. Love represents alternative to hatred as organizing principle, suggesting that caring about others beyond tribal boundaries could prevent conflicts that hatred perpetuates. The love must be mature rather than possessive. Mikasa's love transcends slavish devotion to become love that can say no, that can refuse to enable evil even when it means losing everything. Love as freedom path suggests that being bound to others through genuine care is different from being chained, that chosen connection differs from forced obedience. The path represents how, only by recognizing humanity in enemies, loving them enough to refuse to reduce them to caricatures, can cycles break and freedom emerge for everyone rather than just your in-group. Love as freedom challenges Eren's conception of freedom as absence of constraints, suggesting instead that freedom emerges from relationships where you choose responsibility to others rather than rejecting all bonds. The love path ultimately argues that true freedom isn't isolation or domination, but rather web of genuine connections, where you're free to choose how you relate to others while accepting that others' freedom constrains your own, making freedom communal rather than individual. Fact 144. Isayama's commentary on human nature throughout Attack on Titan suggests that humanity is neither inherently good nor evil, but rather tribal, capable of both cooperation and cruelty, depending on how we define in-groups and out-groups. The commentary shows how ordinary people become monsters when societies teach them to dehumanize others, but also how those same people can show extraordinary compassion toward those they consider human. The story suggests that prejudice and hatred are learned rather than innate, that children would not hate each other if not taught to do so by previous generations. The commentary on power shows how it corrupts regardless of who holds it. Eldians oppressed when they had power. Marley oppresses now that they have power, suggesting that power itself, rather than specific peoples, is the problem. The human nature portrayed is fundamentally tribal. People care intensely about their own group while devaluing outsiders' lives, making genocide possible, not through individual evil, but through collective indifference to suffering of those defined as other. The commentary ultimately suggests that human nature makes cycles of hatred likely but not inevitable, that consciousness and choice can transcend tribal instincts if people recognize our common humanity, making human nature the problem but also the potential solution if we choose to emphasize our capacity for empathy rather than our tribal instincts. Fact 145. The controversial ending's meaning generates ongoing debate about whether Eren was right, whether the Alliance's choice to stop him was correct, whether the cycle actually broke or just paused temporarily. The ending shows Paradis militarizing and preparing for revenge from surviving world, suggesting cycles continue despite the rumbling's horror. The ambiguous epilogue showing Paradis's eventual destruction in far future suggests that Eren's genocide bought time but didn't solve fundamental problem of hatred between peoples. The ending's refusal to definitively judge Eren, showing both his friends mourning him and the world vilifying him, maintains moral ambiguity that defined the series, refusing easy answers about whether he was hero, villain, or victim. The controversy stems from different interpretations. Some see Eren as tragic hero who did terrible but necessary thing. Others see him as monster whose actions were never justified regardless of motivations. The ending suggests that both preventing genocide and stopping Eren were correct choices, that moral complexity means multiple contradictory things can be simultaneously true. The meaning ultimately seems to be that cycles of hatred cannot be completely broken but can be interrupted, that individuals cannot save the world permanently but can make choices that give next generations chance to choose differently, that tragic outcomes don't invalidate efforts to do right thing, even when those efforts cannot prevent all tragedy. The ending's ambiguity represents Isayama's refusal to provide comforting conclusion to story about cycles of violence, instead leaving viewers to grapple with uncomfortable truth that some problems have no solutions, only better and worse responses to impossible situations where every choice involves tragedy and no one escapes with clean hands or clear conscience. And so we reach the end of our journey through Attack on Titan's world, having traced humanity's story from their fear of Titans through their discovery of the world beyond the walls to the final terrible revelations about Ymir's slavery and Eren's solution of genocidal freedom. We have witnessed how this story about monsters transformed into exploration of what makes humans into monsters, how cycles of hatred perpetuate themselves across generations, how trauma reproduces itself through history, how freedom pursued without wisdom becomes tyranny, and how even genocide can have understandable motivations without being morally acceptable. The story has shown us that there are no pure heroes in war, no simple solutions to historical hatred, no way to break cycles without someone accepting injustice without retribution, making Attack on Titan one of anime's most complex and challenging narratives, precisely because it refuses to simplify or provide comforting answers to questions about violence, freedom, and the price of peace. As you drift into final deep sleep, imagine standing in the paths dimension, seeing all of human history laid out simultaneously, every choice, every betrayal, every moment of compassion and cruelty existing at once in that space outside time. See Ymir building titans from sand for 2,000 years, waiting for someone to free her from slavery she could have ended at any moment if only she'd known she could choose. See Eren walking forward toward freedom through mountains of corpses, pursuing liberation by becoming history's greatest monster, believing his terrible choice was the only way to protect those he loved. See Mikasa making impossible choice to kill the person she loved most because love sometimes means stopping those we care about when they've gone too far. See Armin looking at the world's cruelty and beauty and choosing to believe the beauty makes existence worthwhile despite all suffering. See children on both sides learning to hate each other, perpetuating cycles their parents couldn't break, showing how hatred reproduces itself through generations unless someone consciously chooses to let it end. Rest now in understanding that Attack on Titan's story, despite its darkness and tragedy, carries message about human potential, not potential for perfection or easy redemption, but potential to choose differently despite what history and hatred demand. Potential to recognize our common humanity even in enemies we've been taught to dehumanize. Potential to break cycles, even when breaking them means accepting suffering without seeking revenge. Potential to love wisely rather than possessively, to pursue freedom without destroying others' freedom in the process, to make terrible choices while maintaining awareness that those choices are terrible rather than pretending they're heroic. The story suggests that we're all capable of becoming monsters, and that recognizing this capacity is first step toward choosing not to become them. That moral courage means acting rightly, even when wrong actions have better outcomes. That sometimes all we can do is make choices that give next generation chance to choose better than we did. Sleep peacefully knowing that even in stories about the worst humanity can do genocide, hatred, cycles of violence spanning millennia, there remains space for hope, not in easy solutions or happy endings, but in individuals making difficult choices to be better than their circumstances demand, to refuse to perpetuate hatred even when that refusal costs them everything, to recognize that true freedom comes not from destroying all constraints but from choosing which responsibilities to embrace and which connections to honor. The Titans may be gone, but the questions they represented remain. How do we break cycles of hatred? How do we find freedom without taking it from others? How do we love without enslaving or being enslaved? How do we live with moral complexity that offers no pure choices? And how do we leave the forest of violence for children who deserve better than the world we're giving them? Rest now, and may your dreams be free from titans but filled with the wisdom their story taught, that freedom without wisdom is destruction, that love without boundaries is slavery, that breaking cycles requires sacrifice, that understanding your enemies makes them no less dangerous, but makes conflict more tragic, and that the cruelty and beauty of the world exist together, demanding we acknowledge both, while choosing which to amplify through our actions. Good night, and may you wake to a world where children need not become soldiers, where the sins of ancestors need not bind descendants, where cycles can break and paths can diverge toward futures not determined by past hatreds. The walls have fallen, the titans are gone, but the questions remain, and perhaps that's as it should be, for stories that provide easy answers teach us nothing, while those that leave us questioning teach us to think carefully before we act, to recognize moral complexity before we judge, and to choose compassion over convenience even when compassion costs us dearly. Sleep now, and dream of freedom that doesn't require genocide, of love that doesn't require servitude, and of humanity that might someday leave the forest forever.